Hello, everybody. It's now 2022, and we've all survived each other in 2021. We're still here for our 13th podcast. No, it's probably like we did 2 in some months, so we've lost count. But we're here to talk about Joni Mitchell tonight. We are still in the 80s. We are talking about Chalkmark in a Rainstorm. And there it is. This album has a very special place in my heart. So this is going to be a really fun discussion. Before we get to the discussion, I will say that every single time I go onto YouTube, I have more subscribers. So that's really exciting. Every time I go on my Patreon, I have less subscribers. So that's not good. But those who still are, I really appreciate it. And just to show how much I love this podcast, there was a guy begging to come over tonight, and I'm like, oh, can I cancel or delay it? And I'm like, no, Joni Mitchell comes first. So everyone here must know how much I love you all, because he is hot. All right, so Chalkmark in a Rainstorm. Oh man, I have something I got to get in my car. So everyone introduce themselves. Can I trust you guys to go around the circle while I go and grab something?
We can.
All right, everyone jump in and introduce yourselves.
Jump in.
All right, so I'm Bob Mueller in Greenville, South Carolina, and I picked up on Joni around the mid-'70s with Court and Spark and became a huge fan. Loved Wild Things Run Fast, Dog Eat Dog, not so much. Was not when Chalkmark came out. I didn't even buy it. I had a friend of mine who bought it on CD, so I borrowed his CD, and the CD was 46 and some change. So typically I'd take a CD and put it on half of a 90-minute tape. But doing that with Chalkmark, you've got to either let it run out or cut a song. So at the time, and you won't believe this, but the song that I cut from Chalkmark was Tea Leaf Prophecy. So on tape, I had everything except for Tea Leaf Prophecy. For me, this is my least favorite Joni record. It's not to say it's a bad album. It's just to say that for me, for my taste, for where I was, I don't care for it. It hadn't gotten better. Usually when we prepare for these things, I've listened to these records 3, 4, 5 times. Chalkmark, I got through 1.5 times, and that was it. I was done. No more. That's it for me.
Hand it off, Bob.
All right, who are we on?
Who's next on your grid?
Who went already?
David.
Bob. Just Bob.
Okay, so next we have David. You're on mute, though. Uh-oh. We can't hear you. In the meantime, we have Chris.
And the operator says 40 cents more for the next 3 minutes. Okay. That song is 50 years old this year, 1972. So there's another good set of albums. Hi, I'm Chris. I live just north of New York City. I fell into Joni Mitchell by buying the Clouds album because of the beautiful self-portrait on the cover. Stayed for the music. Didn't buy another Joni Mitchell record until Blue. Went back for Ladies of the Canyon. Then stayed chronologically. I think I'm trying to remember when I picked up Song to a Seagull. I think that was after Blue, before For the Roses. But from then on was chronological. And this is Chalkmark is again not dissimilar to kind of Bob's feeling, is probably not my favorite record in her canon, but let's just face it, even on her worst day, this is a body of work that stands head and shoulders above most artists. So I'm sure we're going to find lots of great things to say, even though relatively we might have some misgivings about where in her path this had taken her. But anyway, I can't wait to keep talking about it.
All right, David, I feel like you are now with us.
Do I sound like I'm not with you?
You're with us.
All right. So I'm David. I'm in New York City. I got into Joni with Blue and was a diehard fan from that moment on, from that first moment. So I certainly bought Chalkmark the day it was released. I don't remember that at all. I think I remember that I bought it on CD, and I think it was the first record that I bought on CD. I'm not sure about that either. I like it fine. I really want to hear what people who really like it like about it. So I'm eager to have this conversation.
Next on my grid is Jim.
Hello, friends. I'm Jim Lamadou from Central Ohio, but don't judge me. Let's see. So, Chalkmark. Well, this is kind of a fun little party song, sort of album, sort of in my mind. You can just have it on in the background, which is a departure from all my favorite Joni Mitchell albums. So, let's go.
All right. And up next, we have one of my Patreon subscribers, Sue Tierney.
Hi, I'm Sue. I came in on Court and Spark, and then went back and got the other albums, and then just kept buying albums until Dog Eat Dog. I got Dog Eat Dog, and I really loved Dog Eat Dog. But for some reason, I had this like period in my life where I didn't get back to Joni until Turbulent Indigo. So I had to go back from Turbulent Indigo and get Chalkmark and Night Ride Home, which is interesting. I'm not sure what I was doing during those years, but I missed out. And I also got Chalkmark on CD. I really love this album. You know, there's a couple of songs on this album that I really, really adore. And I understand how some people would find it. I mean, it's a little like there's a couple songs that are a little. I don't know, flighty type of, you know. I mean, they're kind of. I guess like what Jim was saying, that they're fun, you know, but they're not, you know, they're not great songs, you know. But there's a couple of them that I really love, and they're very, and there's a couple that are very experimental, which I appreciate about her too. So, all right, so that's what I have.
All right. And up next, another one of my subscribers, Reuben Bell.
Hello, I'm Reuben. I am just outside of Portland, Maine. And I think, looking back, I think Chalkmark was the first one that I bought new. I had heard Ladies of the Canyon when I was very young. My mother had it, and I loved it. And then I heard she bought Wild Things Run Fast, which I also love when I was older. And then I think Chalkmark was the first one that I bought when it was current. And I've always liked this album. I like the synthesizers. I love the background vocals. I think a lot of the songs are great. And I'm curious to see what other people think. Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have Mark Scott next.
Well, I'm Mark Scott, and I live just north of Seattle. I came in with Court and Spark to Joni Mitchell and loved that album, played it over and over and over, and bought the back catalog and every subsequent record that came out. This one is, again, it's not my most favorite Joni Mitchell album, and I'm not as familiar with this one as I am with most of the rest of them. I listened to it last night, and the version that's in the Geffen box set, which is remastered, and this record sounds better to me every time I listen to it. I like it just a little bit more. We talked the last time about the production on Dog Eat Dog, and the Zoom gods are not being kind to me tonight.
We can hear you.
And I think the production sounds more dated on this one. Dog Eat Dog has kind of an edgy sound to it, which I've always said goes with the material. This one sounds, it's more in almost in a pop vein, and to me it sounds more dated, more like the 80s than Dog Eat Dog does. So I like it better, like I said, though, every time I hear it. So that's that.
All right. And next we have Dave and Robin.
Hi guys, Dave Blackburn, Robin Adler. We have a Joni Mitchell group called Mutts of the Planet that we've been exploring her catalog for the last 15 years. We're out of San Diego, Fallbrook, little town hour north of San Diego. And we've been pleased to be part of Jeremy's podcast for several months. And I didn't come to this album until much later. I was a fan of the 70s records hugely, and then sort of ceased to be a record buyer for a long time. So it wasn't until the 90s that we kind of went back and filled in all the gaps in our Joni catalog. Speaking for myself, we just listened through the album again today, and my feelings about it haven't really changed. I think it's poorly produced, poorly arranged, has none of the poetry that you've come to expect from Joni Mitchell. Some decent players on it, quite apart from it being a product of its era. You know, sonically, I think it's very weak as a piece of art. And so that's kind of my feeling about it. I think the songs are a hodgepodge of material that doesn't really go together. And we were reading the liner notes earlier, and there's so many studios and engineers and co-engineers, and it sounds like it. Like when there's no like focus to it because it was all thrown together from a track done here and a track done there, and then badly mastered. So I'll be talking about that a bit more later because I'm a mastering guy, and so you know the songs. Some of the songs are twice as loud as the others, and that's just not good mastering. Do you have anything to add, Rob?
Well, I hadn't listened to the album for years, and I actually like it better now after listening to it, especially the first 4 tracks. I like them. Even Dancing Clown. I mean, I'm not saying I'm wild about it, but you know, especially because we have in the studio some really great speakers so you can hear everything really well, which makes a big difference rather than listening on a laptop, for instance. But so I was surprised that I liked it better. Like Dave said, there were some real inconsistencies in volume that kind of stand out to you when you hear it. Just kind of a funny thing. I grew up with horses, and I used to show my horses, and I remember Cool Water was one that we'd be riding around in the ring, and they'd have speakers with Cool Water. So that is a somewhat familiar song to me. But yeah, some of the lyrics aren't that great, but there's some, listening to it a little more closely, there's still some very good, poignant lyrics, I think. So I'm kind of half and half with it. But overall, I like it better than I thought.
All right. And then last but not least, we have Jamie.
Hello, I'm Jamie Zubairi. I'm from London, England, and hence I'm in bed because it's like 1:30 in the morning or something like that. I got into Joni Mitchell in 1988, and that was with Ladies of the Canyon. So I was in love with this kind of ethereal voice and really kind of mysterious lyrics. And then in between, it must have been April '88, and when I discovered Chalkmark in a Rainstorm, I was listening to my mother's CD collection, because the reason why I got into Ladies of the Canyon was pushy salesman thought because my mum liked Joan Baez, she should buy Ladies of the Canyon. So she bought Ladies of the Canyon on CD, and it was like the album that opened my world. But also Marianne Faithfull. So we'd heard Marianne Faithfull's like 1960s, "This is the evening of the day," that one, as well as Broken English. She bought those two at the same time, and the difference between the two voices was like, wow, okay, this is a woman who's seen some life in between the two albums. So when I got to Chalkmark and the Rainstorm, I was like, okay, this must be what happens to women's voices from the 60s. So I was not to say into it, but I really liked the kind of 80s polish, much more so than Dog Eat Dog, which I didn't get till afterwards. But yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, it's a very upbeat album for the most part, but it didn't sort of have any of the kind of mystery or depth. It was a lot of like anti-commercial, anti-Reagan, all sorts of stuff that was going on currently. So it was a really kind of like, ooh, okay. What's the word? It was a really contemporary album, so probably dates it a bit more than any of her other material. But yeah, I'm a fan, not a huge fan, but I do put it on because I like it. So yeah, that's me.
So if we were comparing the Joni Mitchell universe to the Marianne Faithfull universe, I would say that Dog Eat Dog was her Dangerous Acquaintances, and Chalkmark is her Child's Adventure. All right, so I'm Jeremy Gloff. I'm your host, and the reason I went to my car was to get my Chalkmark in a Rainstorm blanket so I can get into character. Like on the... All right, I'm ready now to do this. So
what? No hat?
Larry Klein took it. He stole my hat. Okay. So growing up in middle school, I was a big Madonna fan. I was a big Prince fan. I had all the Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, Pat Benatar albums. And then I had this book called the Rolling Stone Record Guide. And I used to sit there and just read it. There was different editions that would come out. And I remember just seeing the list of Joni Mitchell album titles. And I got obsessed with the singer that I didn't know. I only knew Help Me. I heard it once on the radio, and Prince quotes it in one of his songs, The Ballad of Dorothy Parker. So I'm like, oh, that's the song that Prince is referencing in his song. But other than that, I didn't know any Joni Mitchell. I didn't have Big Yellow Taxi, or any of those songs were never on the radio where I grew up. So my only point of reference was this list of album titles. And in middle school, I started writing all her album titles like in my notebooks. Even though I didn't know any of the songs, I was just so intrigued by this universe. So my mom used to do the flea market on Sundays, and I just wanted to find my first Joni Mitchell album, and that's when I found this. So this was my introduction into the world of Joni Mitchell. I didn't know anything else. I never knew Blue, nothing. So the very first Joni Mitchell song I ever really heard was My Secret Place. So I remember going home and putting this on the record player, and from the point of reference where I came from, like a big Pointer Sisters fan, Madonna, all the pop, this just felt so sophisticated and adult to me. And it was just such a dusky album. She mentioned like cafes. She's in a cafe in Colorado. And it just felt so, it was totally a portal into a new universe that I would enter. And I grew up in a small town about an hour outside of Buffalo. So to get music, we had to drive to Record Theater an hour away. So I lived with this album for a couple months. And then my cousin took me to Buffalo. And that's when I bought Blue, Ladies of the Canyon, and Court and Spark. So that's where I went after this. And there's a lot of cafes on Ladies of the Canyon too. So I'm like, oh, this is so sophisticated, because I was like 15 years old. But I loved this album. It was also one of the first ones I ever bought on CD. And then, of course, there's the promo CD that is the interview, if anyone has this one. I meant to listen to it before today, but I forgot to. I'm a bad host. So I really love this album. This was totally my window into the Joni Mitchell universe. And it was weird as I listened to all her other albums. This is so different than anything she ever did before or since, which it seems on this podcast is probably a good thing. But from the pop place that I was coming from, the music I love, this was the perfect bridge. And then I started buying CDs. And I remember I bought all the Joni Mitchell albums on CD. And I said I was never going to buy an album by another artist. Like I had the Joni Mitchell CDs. I'm never going to listen to anything else the rest of my life. And that was back in the days of long boxes. So I cut all the long boxes out and had them on my door in my bedroom. My friend painted the Hijira painting on the other side of the door. So for me, it was just Joni Mitchell for a couple of years. I'm never buying anything else. And then I bought Madonna's Unbreathless on CD, and now I have like 4,000 CDs. So the 2 years was short-lived. But it's interesting because I guess let's start talking about the album. The cover itself, we have a picture of Joni. Is this the first time we have a picture?
No, she was on blue.
No, but just it's the first time since like For the Roses that it was just a picture with no collage or artsiness, right? So it seems like a weird choice for an album cover in the lexicon of Joni Mitchell. Chris?
I just wanted to ask a question to the group. To my understanding, this might be the only, when she would title her albums, she titled them always for a song, but this is the only one that it's a lyric from within a song, an interior lyric that doesn't work as a title on itself. So it's like, I got the sense that she was really pointing toward that particular song and even that particular concept within the song, that she was sort of proud of it. So I just as a jumping off point in terms of getting into the cover. But yeah, I think photography, there was blue, there was For the Roses. Shine had a cover from a photograph from the ballet. What else were there photographs of? This was Klein's. Jira. This was Klein's photograph, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So this is, candid snapshot. I don't know. Can we call it a professional? It's not a studio photography piece. Then again, Blue wasn't either, and certainly Joel's wasn't. But I guess it's about as Joel's was more of a specific setup, though, especially since they made the decision to flip it, around so that it's a mirror image of exactly how it was shot. But I guess this was on one of their road trips somewhere, Santa Fe.
And I always felt like it was definitely the sun going down, not coming up, because the whole album felt very dusky to me. All right, so we have Reuben, then Bob.
I was just going to say, I think the story that she tells about Killer Kyle and meeting the guy after the show, talking about you're up there singing about love and you don't know what love is. That she's told that story over and over and over again in the media. That seems to be one that really has stuck with her over the decades. Maybe that's why she picked this line instead of a song title, because that seems to be a reoccurring story that she tells. And I had something else, but it went out of my head.
Isn't Killer Kyle mentioned in Cactus Tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bleeding from the war.
Oh, yeah.
Brings the medals.
All right, Bob.
So, Chalk Mark, and I think the title's great. It's my favorite thing about this record. It's Chalk Mark in a Rainstorm. And I think she's kind of alluding perhaps to the fact that in the 70s, up to a point anyway, she really ruled. She was, critics loved her, and she sold lots of records, and her tours were sellouts. And then the 80s hit, Wild Things. While it was a good record, it didn't make any big splashes. Dog Eat Dog even less. And so I think some of her perspective at this point is, well, these albums, they're just chalk marks, and the rain will come and wash them away, and they're not going to leave much behind, not really any addition to the legacy. I mean, I don't think she felt that when she made it, but I think she was saying that the way that the audience at the time was responding to what she was doing, it was kind of like, made it feel like a chalk mark in a rainstorm.
And I did go over my head Chris's point that it was all title tracks, and the only rebuttal I have is that there's no song called Miles of Isles. But that doesn't really count. It's a live album, I know. All right. Do we have any other thoughts about the general album itself before we go into the track by track? Of course, I got my little chalk mark song book. Bob?
Well, just to say, I mean, this album actually did do better commercially in Dog Eat Dog. It hit 26 in the UK, 45 in the US, 23 in Canada. They tried a pre-release of Snakes and Ladders, which went nowhere. The single was on My Secret Place with a B-side of Lakota, which also went nowhere. So anyway, it got a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Vocal Performance, but lost out to Tracy Chapman, and rightfully so, with Fast Car, that record.
So you're saying that Fast Car is better than Dancing Clown?
Yes.
All right. Well, speaking of My Secret Place, I have my UK CD single here. This is the first Joni Mitchell song. This is my introduction to the universe, and it just felt so sophisticated and slick and adult, because I probably would have been like 14, 15 there. So it's like, it just felt very adult. You know, at that age, that's what I was, you know, I didn't want to be in my stupid hometown with all these dumb kids. So I would sit and listen to that album and just feel like I was smarter than everybody else. Listen to My Secret Place. What did you all think of this song? Peter Gabriel singing, of course. Sue.
I was going to mention Peter Gabriel. It was just so exciting to me that Joni was singing with another of my favorite singers, songwriters. He was just so fantastic. I mean, starting from Genesis, you know, and then the albums that he was producing in the 80s were beautiful too, you know. And I thought their voices really meshed great on this song. I love this song. It was a really powerful first song for the album too. I thought, you know, she's got her guitar in there. You know, I guess Dave will talk about that. But when you play this, and you know, I love to play this song too. It's a really gorgeous song. The lyrics are just so, you know, romantic. I mean,
Oh, I love this song.
Some of the lines are just, you know, I put things back together there. I mean, that I just adore that line. I think it's so great. So I mean, I think that this is my favorite song on the album. But you know, a couple of the other songs are really great too. But this song, I mean, it's produced beautifully, and you know, the whole thing with the duets. I mean, I think a lot of artists were doing the duet thing during this time. But I think that this duet worked really well. I mean, the other ones I'm not so sure about, but, you know, but this one I thought really worked well.
It was interesting because this was my first Joni Mitchell album. I had no idea that her voice wasn't always like this. So, you know, when I put on Blue, I'm like, oh, okay. Do you know what line I love? Those the bleachers and cafe windows.
It's beautiful, yeah.
It's interesting because the song is kind of slick, but it just, I can't think of any other song by any artist that really sounds like this. It's definitely unique. All right, Dave.
Yeah, I think talking about the duets thing or the duo thing, you have to remember that this was MTV. MTV was king in the 80s, and so if you could do a duet with somebody that had an audience, then you just doubled your audience. So doing a duet with Peter Gabriel or Billy Idol or even Willie Nelson was a good idea. You hoped that all of those people's fans would tune in. So just from a marketing point of view, that made sense. About this particular song, I do like it because I like the kind of harmony in it. I think it's got mediocre lyrics, actually, despite Sue's love of it. I think it's I don't think it's a deep song. I think it's kind of a shallow song that's cute, and we like playing it. But I don't, you know, there's been a decline in depth from Don Juan's Reckless Daughter on the way through the 80s to this. So yes, you can find moments of artistic depth, but not that many. And so you have to kind of, in my opinion, you have to find other things to like about it. And I have a lot of problems with the sonics of this record. The Mike Shipley's mix, the choice of having a very, very crowded sound stage with just a zillion things going on. And she recorded her guitar track 20 times to make that layer of guitars, which was an experiment that she wanted to do, because she always felt like her guitar got lost in the mix. So why not record it 20 times? And then there's the piano, then there's the drums, like 100 meters away from reverb, and just a very kind of bizarre sound to it. But then it's got kind of a neat melody and a cute sentiment. So I think it is a very strong opener to the album, but it's a very weak album. And so this is the best song on the album, probably.
All right, Bob.
So yeah, I mean, echoing a lot of what Mark says what Dave says without repeating it. Yeah, layers and layers and layers, and the song at its core could be a decent song. The bridge, especially. I mean, the bridge on this song is really melodic and pretty, and the chord changes are really, really nice. The duets. I mean, you look back at the names that she pulled for this record, and none of these people, 0 of them, were random. I mean, these were people. Again, as Dave said, were huge in '88. You know, Don Henley had lots of hits going on. The Boys of Summer. Billy Idol had his thing. Peter Gabriel with So. Even Benjamin Orr from the Cars had the biggest single the Cars did was Drive, which was Benjamin Orr's vocal. And he's on 2 of these songs. You can't hear him, of course. Tom Petty is here, but just barely. You know, Wendy and Lisa from Prince's band. These are not people who just happen to be wandering by in the studio. These were very explicit picks for marketing purposes to try and help push this record. I don't know if it was Joni's choice, if it was the record company's choice, but and I love Peter Gabriel as much, if not more than Sue does, but their voices are so similar to me. This duet sometimes, and even today when I listen to it, is that Peter or is that Joni? I really, sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes you can because you hear this Peter Gabriel growl at the start of the line, but sometimes that might be Peter, it might be Joni. So, I mean, a duet where the voices are so similar to me doesn't work as well. The song is one of the best, if not the best on the record, but the layers of production just bury in muck.
See, I remember an interview where she said that she constructed the song as if it was a couple that was so entwined that one person would start the thought and the other one would end it. And I do feel that is successful in the song. And I just love the damn reverb, like coming out of a cave. I love the layers. Bring on the 80s. Reuben, and did I skip you? Reuben, Mark, and then Jamie. You've had your hand up for a little bit, so we're gonna do Reuben, Mark, then Jamie.
I was just gonna say this is one of my favorite songs on the album too, and I do like the combination of Joni and Peter's vocals on this, even though they are pretty similar. And I remember reading an article that actually was critical of that and said you couldn't tell one from the other, but I always could. And I've always been curious why, when her whole career, Joni seemed to not worry about too much about hits and what was current and everything else. And she finally puts one together that hits all the right buttons. It's current. The sound is current. She's got all these great guest stars on it. And it didn't take the bait. Like, who did she piss off that this didn't do better than it did? Because I do think it was a good record for what else was going on at the time. I feel like it should have been better than 46 in the US. I always wondered why. But yeah.
Because I think of other people from the 70s, like, look at Carly Simon. Now, of course, she's not in the league of Joni Mitchell, but she really came back hard with Coming Around Again in the 80s with a similar kind of palette, kind of that smooth. I guess she was a little bit more adult, contemporary, accessible, but.
And I think this is a much better record than Coming Around Again is, personally.
I don't know. I love Do the Walls Come Down.
I like it, but I like this one better.
All right. And whoever's ready to have a Carly series someday, here's your guy. Okay. So we're going to do Mark and then Jamie.
In the liner notes for the Geffen box set, she says that she deliberately tried to make the gender change, I think she said arbitrarily, make it sound arbitrary. And she discovered, I think she said, recording with Don Henley, that voices in certain registers, certain voices sounded a lot the same. So she was really going for that. She wanted the two vocals, I think, to sound alike. She also said that the director of the movie American Anthem approached her to write this for a scene in his movie. And he also asked her, well, you might as well take a crack at writing a title song, write an American Anthem. And she gave him the next song on the record, which is number 1. And they rejected the two songs, of course. And the director told her, I wanted an American Anthem. I didn't want the truth.
So if the woke population gets upset about Don Juan's Reckless Daughter's album cover, we can just cite the duets on Chalkmark and a Rainstorm, perhaps the first non-binary gender neutral music created.
There you go.
All right, we have Jamie and then David.
My Secret Place is, I guess, one of the best songs of the album, and it has some really killer lines in it, which really get to me when singing them. I think I always change the line slightly, but the line, out of all of the girls, oh God, help me, Sue, help me. Out of all of the girls that you see
In bleachers and cafe windows,
sitting, flirting with someone,
looking to have some fun.
Why did you pick me? You know, is one of the most like, oh my God, wow. It's a Joni line, and you kind of go, yes, please. More of that, which is hard to mine in a lot of the album. But I want to talk about the video, because she sold a couple of paintings in Japan and got a lot of money to make videos. So she hired Anton Corbijn, who did Joshua Tree for U2. So that was another kind of commercial choice. And stylistically, it was kind of really interesting and very hip at the time, I guess, but done more subtly, I think, than anything, and a lot more visually interesting with the way parts of it was filmed backwards and things like that. And we actually went to the beach where she filmed it a couple of at the last Joni Fest in Dorset. So that was kind of like a little pilgrimage. What else? What was I going to say? And to me, it always feels like a piano song. Bizarrely, I can't hear 20 guitars. I can play it, obviously, on guitar, but I don't. It always feels like a piano song because of the kind of that haunting piano melody that opens it up. So yeah, it's really interesting that she thought she'd double the guitars together. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really strong opener, and then she kind of goes back into the nitty gritty. But yeah, I really like what she does with it.
Yeah, and if y'all remember, there was some songs on Wild Things that other people liked that were, the romantic. Like this is the romantic Joni that I love, with her blanket and the sun going down and the cowboy hat. All right, David.
Yeah, so this is actually general comments. I guess I should have said it before, but I hadn't thought of it. I wish I had read Reckless Daughter again, because I think in there he talks about the 80s as a time when Joni was becoming really difficult. And I think that Joni has spoken of the 80s as a time when everyone betrayed her. And I don't know where this quote came, I forget where this quote came from, but I'm pretty sure I'm remembering it correctly, that, and she just said, everyone betrayed me. I don't know, I feel that in her voice. I really don't like this voice of hers. It seems like she's always, and same with Dog Eat Dog. It's pushing, it's straining, it's trying to make everything good, and I guess that's kind of, I'm trying to tie this up somehow. Except that I guess to me this is a time when she has kind of lost her grounding some way, and she's just trying to do shit. So that's what I think. And I'd be curious if anybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that everyone betrayed her, or the 80s were really difficult for her, or that she was becoming impossible to be with.
All right, Dave.
Amplify David's point. Well, first of all, I have no idea whether she was difficult to work with or be around, but I do think that her voice was very strident and unappealing on this record. It's also buried in the mix. It's such a crowded arrangement that you actually have to be reading the lyrics to be able to hear what she's saying, which is, not to sound like an old man, but that is kind of a bad mix when you can't hear the words.
Right.
It doesn't matter when it's Janet Jackson or, it doesn't, because there aren't any particular important words to hear. But with Joni Mitchell, we've come to believe that the words are a big deal. And
Right.
you actually, I've listened to this album sort of on and off for 30-something years, and I have no idea what most of the words are. Today we listened through it, and Reuben had the liner notes of the CD out and was reading them, but without that you couldn't hear them. It's so interfered with by sounds and synthesizer little kind of sounds that contribute nothing, and then backing vocals that are all kind of intertwining, and so you actually don't even get the point. So this is a very poorly conceived record. There might have been some good songs at their outset that on guitar and vocal they worked, but once you produce the shit out of it like this, and you have unlimited tracks, and you've got all these cool new 80s sounds with the delays and all the mega chorus and everything that Mike Landau brings to it. The pitch is very, very liquid, and the sound stage, which Jim, you'll understand what I'm talking about, like the sound stage of what you're listening to, where there's a front and a back and a left and a right and a kind of a dimensionality to it. It's all gone. It's all far away, swimming in muck. And that is just terrible engineering. It's terrible arranging. And even, which I didn't even know until today, the mastering. And Bob Ludwig, I got to say, is one of the great mastering engineers in the business. Instead of going to Bernie Grunman, who I'm not a fan of, they went to Bob Ludwig on this one, and he is a legend. But he didn't make it so that there's a smooth listen through the record. The first 5 tunes up till Beat of Black Wings are kind of this rather chilly, kind of not very engaging sound, and then the Beat of Black Wings comes in, and it's twice as loud. It's got a lot of bass. It's very big and punchy, obviously recorded at a different studio, mixed by a different person. And then, later on the record, you get another couple of those, Snakes and Ladders, but it's just very weird. It sounds like demos that have been cobbled together to kind of show what could be done as an album, but and then thematically there's no coherence either, so other than anger, and far more anger towards the culture than Dog Eat Dog too. So there's really nothing to hang your hat on here.
Otherwise, he loves it.
I don't even like the cover.
I'm gonna go against the grain and say that I loved Joni's voice on this album because it was. Now some people think it's smooth is bad, but I felt it was lower but very smooth. And then the next thing I heard from Joni, because this is the first I became a fan. It was probably 1989. And then the next thing that came out was her Wall Live in Berlin, where she was singing Goodbye Blue Sky. And by that time, it was low, but a little edgier and a little rougher than it was on Chalkmark, because I thought it was just produced very slick. And I was there for it. Sign me up.
I agree it's slick, but you got to remember, I used to do this.
Right.
At that time, I was doing this. I was looking for these synthesizer sounds and these I was programming the drum machines, and I was, at the time, I would have been, this is it.
Right.
But with over, we're talking about this record in, 35 years on, it just kind of sounds like a failed experiment. And so do most 80s records, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm not singling it out. I think that Sting's Nothing Like the Sun has some beautiful songs on it, Fragile, and some incredible drumming from Manu Katché, who's on this. And, there's great musicians at the time, but everybody was enchanted with all these new gizmos. And I was too. And so you get kind of entranced by, we could fuck with that till, make it kind of sound like it's like a mile away, and then we could do this like it's in a cave. You do all of that and you have this.
Yeah, I would definitely admit that probably my love for this album has a lot to do with sentimentality, and it kind of being the first one I ever heard. It turned me from a pop kid to a smug middle schooler. I just listened. I remember telling my classmates, "What music do you like?" Joni Mitchell. And at that time, Joni hadn't come back. In the 80s, she wasn't looked at as kind of like the legendary godmother. Yeah. Like it wasn't cool to like Joni Mitchell in Phonogenics, New York in 1989, but I thought it was cool. All right, I'm losing track of the hands. I see a Chris. And who else did I miss? Okay, so we're gonna do Chris, then Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond, I guess, back with Dave on sort of the sonic thoughts on this record. I agree, Dave, there's a lot of anger in this record. I think that she hadn't gotten it out of her system through Doggy Dog, and probably the response that record elicited was probably not what she was hoping for either. And the whole what she recalls as being the process of having made that record. But she was still in love with Klein, and they were, taking these wonderful road trips. She was choosing some, great people to play with and guest stars for the record. I seem to remember her doing quite a lot of promotion for this record, particularly with the next song that she would perform on talk shows and morning shows and late night shows, and she did a lot of television. I don't know if it was because she wanted to get on television outside of MTV. And listing Peter Gabriel on this track was terrific. I remember I was spending a lot of time in '87 in and around Peter Gabriel's stomping ground in Bath, England, because I was working in Bristol with a group of animators, and I kept hoping that at some point I'd run across Peter. No, never did. But if I had, wow, who might have been with him? It would have been fun. It was a pretty interesting time. A lot of folks were. It seemed like the focus wasn't quite as much on Nashville and Los Angeles. That somehow MTV had shifted it a bit out of those two American centers to other places. I don't know if anybody else felt that sense in terms of how music and where music was being made at the time. So maybe this was her just looking past what she'd come to grow a little bit of enmity toward. But yeah, I don't know if this is the strongest opener. I think I agree with y'all that as a duet, it's structured to work well, but it doesn't really work as well as it might have.
All right, Jim, and then Robin.
Okay. Let's see. I think the bleachers word is a throwback to Blonde in the Bleachers. There are very few places where Joni kind of lets her trademark vocal go. Like she sort of draws out the word girls in bleachers or cafe windows, whatever, however that goes. She holds that out like she used to, but other than that, there's not a whole lot on this album that sounds like, Joni singing. On the other hand, I'll apologize for this, that, you can't write Both Sides Now over and over again without repeating yourself. You know what I mean? You can only go to the very deepest themes so many times, and then you've already done it. So, 3, I'm from Ohio, so I don't know how to pronounce this name. I'm going to say Manu Katesh, and I know that's wrong, sorry. But he's kind of wasted on this track. And it's a shame because he's a wonderful drummer. I think he's worked with Sting as well as Peter Gabriel. He's terrific. The loudness thing, I almost never disagree with Mr. Blackburn, but she had a very loud change in Paprika Plains when the band plugs in again. And I think that she probably insisted that the mastering of the kind of like easy listening songs be mixed real low on the final, and then the party song jumps out at it and then back down again. That's just a theory. I haven't confirmed it. And finally, I've felt often that if an album has more than one producer, more than one studio, more than 2 guest vocals, for me personally, it's a kiss of death. And I would submit these 2 other albums as evidence of that. Santana's Supernatural. He went all over the world and took like 2.5 years and more than 3 producers. And it's just, not only does it not hang together, but it sounds like everybody just said, sure, Carlos, come on over. We'll throw something together. There isn't one track on that album which was hyped like crazy that, I want to listen to again. And the other album that has a lot of producers and studios and guest vocals and all that, all these different, we'll just throw it in a blender ideas is Elton John's Caribou. That's when I stopped buying Elton John. He lost a lot for me when he stopped being the piano player in that great rock band that was on 11/17/70. That live album just jumps, and Caribou is Velveeta to me. That's it from me.
Before I move on, do we have any other Janet Jackson fans here? Because she may not be the greatest lyricist, but I can make a strong case for the Velvet Rope. There's some stuff on there that changed my life. All right. Robin, was your hand up?
Yes, it was. Well, in defense of Jeremy, if this was the first album that you heard of Mitchell, and he's a lot younger than we are. Today, when I listened to it, I really just tried to listen, in an open-minded way. And, Dave has his ears are going all over the place. So he's, more critical, but I liked it. And I'm surprised, like I said before, but I think there is not that we're talking about, I know we're specifically talking about this song, My Secret Place, but on the couple of songs where the drums really stick out, they were programmed by Joni. So in the the tea leaf or the beat of black wings, she programmed the drums on number one. There was snare on it. Manu did snare, but I actually thought she did a pretty good job with the drum programming on that song. But anyway, if you got into Joni early, you've already gotten kind of an attachment to her music and the lyrics, and yeah, they were deeper in most respects, but I think that we have our own prejudice because of the long time. I'm sorry, I'm not that articulating very well, but you're maybe not as open-minded to her sound. But I mean, I love the fact that her voice has changed. I mean, if she still had the same voice back when she was younger, yeah, it'd be beautiful, but not nearly as interesting, I think. I mean, so that I'm just, trying to defend you, Jeremy, and your love for this album. But Dave and I, darn it, we really worked to get our sound today. It's so disappointing that we're not going to be doing My Secret Place, but we really enjoy it, and it's one song that Dave and I can sing together.
Let's do an encore next month. We can add it to the Night Ride Home one.
Well, I'm still working on trying to see why A is not talking to B, so I may get it.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I will say, I lived with this Joni Mitchell album for a month. So to me, someone that grew up with loving commercial pop, like loving it and still love it, here was someone talking about romance, talking about Native American prejudice. A title like Tea Leaf Prophecy just felt so sophisticated to me. The story of Beat of Black Wings was beautiful to me. And then the anti-commercialism, like being a young adolescent, it really just felt kind of woke to me at the time. And, we're right in the midst of the 80s. So, I had my Joni Mitchell, then my Paula Abdul, Forever Your Girl, right next to each other, literally. All right. I'm losing track of the names. Reuben, was your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Robin, I think you really hit that on the head there. When I first heard Chalkmark in a Rainstorm, I had not heard Court and Spark. Well, I'll tell you what I had heard, I think, was only Ladies of the Canyon and Wild Things Are Fast, maybe Doggy Dog. I can't remember where that one came in, but I didn't have any, I had nothing else to compare it to in the canon. So I didn't have any hang-ups about what had come before. That makes total sense. And I think, sorry, David, you said something earlier about how she sounded so angry on this. And I've never thought that, but now that you said it, I can hear it. And it reminds me, without getting political here, I've had friends over the last couple of years who were so upset at the political situation and the Trump situation that they couldn't quit talking about it. And it colored everything that came out of them and continues to. And with what she was going through at the time in the late 80s, it's the same kind of thing. That what you said totally put all of that into perspective for me. Maybe her entire being was colored with this anger and whatever it was at the time that leaked out into what she was working on, even though the songs on this record aren't particularly political the way they were on Doggy Dog in that respect. But I don't know. It was an interesting thing that you said. Thank you.
Not to jump ahead, but that's what, to me, made the next album so refreshing when it came out, is to go from this and then to have that be the first Joni Mitchell album I experienced day of release. My mind was blown at the time. And, like I said, entering the Joni Mitchell universe through this album, the next year of my life, it was just a wild journey of just exploring album by album, the best catalog that probably was ever written by anybody. And, my mind was blown over and over because really, I love this album, but there was nowhere to go from up but here, except for Wild Things Run Fast. But that's subjective. Any other thoughts on My Secret Place before we move on?
Well, I was just going to say that not specifically My Secret Place, but, several of these songs, they talk about the superficiality of couples. I mean, so there's a little bit of Harry's House, in there as far as the topic. Maybe not as beautifully written as Harry's House, but she's still. I don't know how many other artists were talking about some of those things.
Right in the midst of it.
But
the 80s were, if you're going to talk about superficiality, there's your decade.
I just watched that series on CNN that goes decade by decade. And I just sat there and cried because there's some really powerful moments, but the 80s, definitely superficial. All right. Bob, I'm guessing there's probably like hundreds of covers of My Secret Place.
There's one. There's one. Owen Duff recorded this in 2008.
Did he do both parts?
No, I haven't heard that song in a long time. I've got it, but I haven't heard it.
Okay.
I was going to listen to these covers. There's obviously only a very handful of covers on this record, but yep, there's the one.
Well, speaking of covers, before we discuss the next song, I believe that our friend Sue is going to perform number one. Let me pause it while you get set up.
This video, which I'm gonna just put it in the chat, just in case anybody wants to check it out. She did an interview in New Zealand promoting this album, and she played this song acoustically. So this is my kind of bumpy version of the way she played it in that video, and much to my surprise, this is another one of her shuffle songs. And I have a really hard time playing the shuffle. I'm going to try it. But I think I worked at it a halfway decent version, so here we go. Number one, honey, tell me when your working day is done. When you're reaching for the high road, reaching to be number one. Get a car, you want a boat, you want a itty bitty miny moe. Oh, there must be more to living than a mortgage and a lawn to mow. Sweaty work and lucky breaks, blood and tears is all it takes to be a winner. People cheer and people gasp, people want your autograph when you're a winner. Win or lose, to the loser goes a heart sick blues. To the victor goes the spoils. Honey, did you win or lose? Sweaty work and lucky breaks, blood and tears is all it takes to be a winner. People cheer and people gasp, people want your autograph when you're a winner. Run, 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 let's see you run. You'll be beaten by the starting gun. Will we shower you with flowers, or will we shun you when your race is run? Will we shower you with flowers, or will we shun you when your race is run? Will we shower you with flowers, or will we shun you when your race is run?
trophy winner. Got to hold your head up high. Got to be a winner, trophy winner. Got to hold your head up high. Got to be a winner, trophy winner. Got to hold your head up high. Oh, number one.
Nice shuffle, Sue.
It's not a shuffle.
Ah.
That made my week.
Excellent.
That was so good. Now, first of all, I loved how Joni Mitchell turned her background vocals kind of into a percussion instrument on a lot of this album, especially in this song with the, you know, the chant she repeats. That made for some very good car sing-alongs with my little CD and my Discman back in the day. And I didn't even have a CD player in my car. I had one of those Discmans that had a cassette adapter that went to the tape player, which shorted out like every 2 months, and I always had to buy another one.
There was so much media in those days. Oh my god! I still had 8 tracks then too.
Didn't she premiere the song on the Amnesty International concert when people were throwing stuff at her? Wasn't it this song that she was?
There was 3 Great Stimulants, and maybe.
And I think it was this too. I think she did.
Yeah, right.
I believe that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she also did it on Leno, and I think she toured with this song quite a bit on television.
Well, I don't have much to say except I love the song. Love it, love it, love it.
Didn't she
Anybody
do it
else?
in Italy as well? Didn't she do it in Italy for the Tenko thing? The Tenko
Yes,
Award.
I've seen that video recently. Yes.
Yeah.
Mark.
Well, I'll just comment that I worked in offices for pretty much all of my working career and in the business world. And I've known people that this is a perfect description of. I mean, they're out to be number one, you know, to get to the top so they can have a eeny, meeny, miny, mo, a mortgage and a lawn to mow, a boat, a car. And some of them are cutthroat and ruthless, you know. Not all of them. I worked with a lot of good people too, but it's a pretty good description of that world.
And I will say maybe this isn't a new theme for Joni, but I definitely feel like she's a little crustier. She's getting a little crustier as time goes on. All right, we have David, and then we had Chris, and then Bob.
Yeah, I kind of want to actually pick up on what Reuben said. Harry's house is a lot better, and you know, it's like there's the arrangement, you know, the same theme, and you know, God knows the arrangement is a horrible song, but Harry's house is a fabulous song, and it just seems to me this song is a little more, well, kind of a lot more simplistic and cliched approach to, you know, that materialist striving. I really like this song. I love the rhythmic hoo-ha in it. I don't know, you know, I'm not a sophisticated enough musician to know like what's going on there, but I love all the layering and intricate rhythmic shit.
Well, David, I just want to interject. Harry's house is more of a character study, and this is more generalized, I think. You know, they're not talking about, she's not really talking about one specific person or people.
All right, we have Chris, then Bob.
Well,
then Jamie.
That was the perfect, Mark, thank you very much, because that was the perfect segue into what I'm about to say. It was the me decade. The 80s were the me decade, and this was her taking a big mirror and showing America, you know, and the world really where their heads were. And you know, it was not a pretty posture. It really wasn't. This was her really, you know, giving it back. And I think this was one of the strongest songs on the record. I'm going to ask, was this ever a single? Was this released as a single?
No.
That it should have been, because it had the melodics, it had the rhythm, it had the groove, and it even had the attitude. I mean, they should have really released this as a single.
This is one of the ones with Ben Orr on it, right? Is he the one that sings the number one, like way back in the mix?
On this one. This is one of the 2 songs he's on.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, run, 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 run. Let's see you run. Took me right back to first grade when I'm reading C spot, run. These lyrics are extremely banal. It's a very easy target to talk about. Oh, we all want to condemn the people who are reaching for the high rung. It's an easy target. Like shiny toys was a very easy target, right? It's nothing that was, oh, who knew that we were in the me decade? We all knew that. So these words are extremely banal. I mean, I would ask anybody to go back to anything on Hajira or Hissing on Summer Lawns or Down Wands Like His Daughter and look at those words and then look at these words. There's just no comparison. And the music is just, again, it's redundant, it's repetitive, goes nowhere. Sue, I mean, I did love your performance of the song. Not to diss that, but this song just brings nothing to the table from Joni, from what I loved about Joni Mitchell.
All right, Jamie and then Dave.
This song always reminds me of the film, probably more than the book, American Psycho. Do I mean that? Do I mean American Psycho? And it's just a kind of capsulization of that era of what I remember growing up in Malaysia. Everybody was into it, and not even with any kind of awareness, actually. So I don't know, maybe we were just kids, or maybe we were just in our like late teens. I remember when this came out, everybody wanted to be wearing Christian Dior or Yves Saint Laurent and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly the 90s hit and nobody wanted to wear designer labels. Everybody wanted to wear wheat germ. You know what I mean? It was one of those things, because it was so, the mirror cracked, I guess, and we saw ourselves, but it took us a while, especially us kids, coming through. But yeah, there's something about this song. It's not been a standout song for me on this album. But it's certainly been one of those, like, it really kind of, I think with this album, it's like she wanted to do the 80s, more so than, because she did the whole 70s stuff, and it was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I've done that, been there. And that's what it feels like. And what was one of the reviews said, from Q magazine, I think the line I remember the most is, doesn't have anything to prove, but doesn't mean she doesn't have anything to say, was one of the things. It was like, she's done all that, but she's still saying stuff. I don't know, it's a bit more discreet of a way of saying like, could be better. B+.
All right, Dave.
I think you could make a case that since she was very concerned about the banality of the 80s, that she was going to write songs with banality in them. A little bit self-defeating, I think, in the long run. But maybe she thought, okay, I don't want depth. If people can't handle my kind of depth, then I'll just give them something they can handle, which is repetitive, very unimaginative chord progressions. Yeah, it's a cool tuning, as Sue just showed us, but it's still a 3-chord song, or maybe a 4-chord song. There's no bridge, there's no adventure. It just is kind of this riff, and then lyrically, most of all, like Bob said, she's actually saying nothing that isn't perfectly obvious.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to be a winner, trophy winner, hold your, okay, genius. So, but she knows that that's banal. So, I mean, she knows better than anybody. So maybe you could make a case that she's just trying to give America what it wants.
Well, I'm just wondering. I mean, this was really a production album. I mean, there's so much production on it, and maybe that was more important than the lyrics because the lyrics on a lot of the songs were hard to understand.
This album, to me, the first time I heard it, kind of landed as mood pieces. That each song was kind of a mood piece. And, at that time in my life, I was literally surrounded by Bust a Move everywhere I went at the teen center. So even these kind of stupid lyrics had a little bit more depth than what I was hearing when I went to the teen center.
Let's compare it to its contemporaries, which were Nothing Like the Sun, Sting, So, Peter Gabriel, Boys of Summer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of those albums are produced to pieces like this is, but they all have strong melodies, they have strong song construction, they have better lyrics.
Right.
And yeah, they've all got good musicians on them. Manu Katche's on all, I think on all of those. There's no question that, Mike Landau, and these were all top. Mike Landau was the Larry Carlton of the 80s. So no problem with the players and everything, but nobody was really being used for their genius. They were just being used for their current appeal. Like the Mike Landau triple chorus sound was really happening that year, so everybody had to have it. And so from a production standpoint, yes, it's heavily produced, but not in the service of the songs. And we've all talked about last month about how when you hear Dog Eat Dog, the songs of Dog Eat Dog played on the piano, you go, oh my, that's a really good song, isn't it?
Right.
I had no idea. Well, isn't that kind of a failure of production to hide what a good song is?
It's interesting that you bring up those albums, Dave, because you think of something like Boys of Summer, which I think is an amazing song, or In Your Eyes from So, songs to be heavily produced and still have emotion, and there's really no hooks on these Chalkmark songs. And if you're gonna do pop music, you got to have a little bit of a hook.
I agree. And so I love production, but it's always got to serve the music. And otherwise you're just basically doing a NAMM show ad for gear. Here's the coolest gear from Yamaha, and if you've ever been to the NAMM show, that's exactly what it is. It's like people demoing the coolest thing that everybody has to have. So I don't give her high marks for whether she wanted it produced like this or agreed to have it, or let Larry Klein do this, or Mike Shipley, or whoever was responsible for the end result. They missed the point of what she was trying to say. And you would have no idea that Joni Mitchell was a great singer by listening to this record.
All right, Mark.
What you said, Dave, was kind of something that I've been kind of turning over in my head too, about maybe she's trying to make some kind of a statement here. Superficiality, though, was more what came into my mind. I mean, maybe she's making a statement about superficiality, slickly done things, slickly produced. I don't know. The other thing, when I was listening to this earlier today, and Sue, you might appreciate this, I thought of Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. And there's a verse that goes, you put your bet on number one and it comes up every time. The other kids have all backed down, so they put you first in line. So you finally ask yourself just how big you are as you take your place in a wiser world of bigger motor cars. So maybe Ian Anderson said the same thing more poetically and better than Joni. But that was what, 15 years before, though.
And coming a couple years after this, if lust and hate is the candy, give them what they want. All right. Reuben.
Sorry, I got stuck there for a minute. This is a really interesting discussion to me, and I'm not a musician. I've said this 100 times. I have nothing to do with music, but I'm an event producer and an event planner, and I mostly do corporate events and weddings. And sometimes when I have my initial meetings with a client go a certain way, and then we bring in lighting and food and music and all of the other components that make these big events. And sometimes, even when the plan is good, you end up with an event that's overproduced, or it's overthought. This happened a lot during 2021 when I had clients that were booked from 2020 that pushed forward a year because of COVID. The clients especially had all been thinking about the events so long that it was in the oven too long. And when it was finished, it wasn't what it could have been. Does the same thing happen in a case like this? You bring in all these people, you have this idea, you start with kind of a small group, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and you record it and put it all together in 18 different places. And then 2 years later, you've got the product, which isn't really the sum of its parts. Does that happen in a case like this with music?
Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
You have, am I on here? Yeah. Reuben, that's exactly what happens. You've got too many chefs. You have a loss of the actual vision of the direction of the project, and that's supposed to be correctable, down the line. I mean, it's quite common to record in different studios and then make an album, but somebody at some point has to listen through the material and go, okay, well, we need to make this work as a whole. And some of that is sonic, which is up to the mastering guy, and some of it is conceptual, which is too late for that. So this is an album where, yeah, there's really no theme to it. There's a couple of songs that are snarky about and superficiality. So yeah, we all get that. That's the 80s. And then there's Cool Water, and then there's The Bird That Whistles, and then there's Killer Kyle, Beat of Black Wings, and they're just kind of random mishmash of material. And I guess the one thing that does kind of make it work together or make it hang together is the fact that it's all glassy and shiny and and heavily produced. But I just want to conclude my point by saying that Joni Mitchell is the benchmark of humanity, of humanity in songwriting. Like if you think about deep humanity in songwriting, you think of Joni Mitchell. We do anyway, right? And this album doesn't really have that. It's got some efforts to be a pop singer and be current and make some sales. But even that is not really what she's about. She turned down the opportunity to write hit singles years ago. She laughed at David Geffen wanting her to write more hit singles, and turned out, Turn Me On, I'm a Radio, which was a hit single. And so she could easily do that, but that was done without much sincerity either. That was like, oh, you want kind of a dumb little song. Yeah, I can do that. And she turns that out, 15 years earlier. And here she is actually trying to do it for real, except there are no hits on it. There's very few melodies that stick in your mind. So that it's failing as pop because it's not hooky enough. I would say number one is maybe one of the hookier the tunes, but it's so crowded. You can't really, as soon as you hear, as soon as you hear one of the hooks, it's being intercepted by some other line. And overall, that is the biggest problem with this album from its construction, is that no idea is allowed any kind of space to sit in. It's being invaded by other ideas from behind or to the side that have no relevance to it, really. It's just like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and let's do it all, you know. So you couldn't do this with an 8-track machine. Once you have 48 tracks, you can do it all day long. So this is sort of partly the technology of the era, is it allows you to overdo everything. And we all did it, you know, but they were supposed to know better.
All right, Jim.
Okay, let's see. I think last month when we were discussing Dog Eat Dog, someone said that there were lyrics that were credited to Larry Klein, and I think somebody said that Larry coached Joni Mitchell on lyric writing. I'll pause for a second while we all digest that. and Mr. Klein's coaching was to just like punch out 3 or 4 words at a time and then repeat them. And that's what I'm hearing here on number 1. Is although he doesn't get a lyric writing credit, they're number one, honey, tell me, you know, when your working day is done. That's not among Joni's finest rhymes. Let's see, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I'm not sure exactly how Springsteen's albums fit in the timeline that Dave outlined with all those other great ones, but I've been reading about Springsteen lately, and when he was writing The River, he'd write 6 songs and they'd record them, and then he'd say, yeah, you know, like we might use this one, and then he'd give away Fire, and then he'd write 6 more, and Steve Van Zandt would say, holy cow, this is great, you know, this is because Steven liked the garage rock songs, and there were a few of them that actually survived onto The River, and then Bruce would like throw them all away, and that method of working, of like writing stuff and then rejecting it because it didn't fit into the theme, whatever theme there is on The River, and it's really sort of a loose collection of portrait songs is what I get out of it, but it doesn't try to be huge, right? It doesn't try to tackle all of the United States of America on one album. At least on The River, he's talking pretty much about the people in Freehold and the people in Asbury Park. You know, it's like Bruce was still writing about the mythology of small town America, you know, sort of the American forgotten class, not just you know, white Catholics, but like Italian Americans, Black Americans, and all that. So what Springsteen did was he didn't try to fill up 24 tracks. You know, they I don't know what exactly they were working with, but they would just like go in there and record stuff, and then they'd say, yeah, you know, it's not good enough. It's not the right song. It doesn't further this theme that he couldn't put his finger on it, but he knew that those 5 from last week, no. And that kind of gets to what I hear Dave objecting to on this album, is that they didn't listen through it all and say, we don't have a center here. You know, that Joni needs to write 20 more songs, whatever. So not everyone was working on in huge studios. Not everyone was working with 24 tracks. You know, not everyone had all those gated tricks. You know, there were a couple songs, but not many of them. Okay, that's enough for me.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, just a quick comment, to Dave's point about the mishmash of songs. From what I read, the studying that I did on this record, when she showed up at Peter's Gabriel's studio in England, she only had 3 songs, under her belt. One of which was My Secret Place, which most of us have said was a good, solid song. But she only had 2 other songs. So it's like, okay, we're making an album. So we've got to have 10 or 11 songs. So you need to come up with some more songs. So what do? You pull, okay, what's a movie that I liked that I can make a song out of? What's my dad likes Sons of the Pioneers. Let's throw a Sons of the Pioneers cover on there. Let's dig up an old folk song and adapt that for this record. Let's look at the newspaper, which she did, and pull out names and write a song about that. So, it's certainly very un-Joni like from what we know about her. I'm out.
See, I disagree with all of you. I feel like the album I felt like it did have a theme because she's going, even Cool Water is a comment on environmentalism. The album kind of felt like a laundry list of topical things that were on people's mind in 1988, whether it's Native American rights, materialism, dirty water, because I grew up on Lake Erie. It was terrible at the time. And then, she comes into A Bird of Whistles at the end, which is kind of the breath of fresh air. Like, after all this crap and all this bullshit that society, just look up at the sky and there's a bird. And that was kind of as the credits were rolling on this movie. So to me, I think it was a little bit more cohesive than anyone else on this discussion found it, which is okay. That's what makes music so great, is that it's subjective. All right, Reuben, were you going to say something? Did we lose you?
Hold on one second. There we go. Yeah, I was reading in Reckless Daughter, I think he mentioned that Klein came in with 3 finished tracks that Joni had not written lyrics for, one of which was Snakes and Ladders. And he wanted to give it to somebody random like Robert Plant, I think it was. I haven't read it in a long time.
Yep, it is Robert Plant.
Robert Plant. And then she insisted that she wanted to keep it for this record, and then eventually wrote Snakes and Ladders around it. But it just seems like she was working much more hodgepodgey than she had in the past. Maybe that's part of the problem too. And this sort of brought up a larger question with somebody like Joni Mitchell. Dave, you said Joni Mitchell is the benchmark, which I agree with for a lot of people in terms of songwriting. What does somebody like Joni Mitchell do in 1987 when she's ready to start working on another project and she doesn't have anything as profound to say as she had in the past? Maybe this is as good as it got for her in 1987. Should she just not release anything? Should she, what does somebody like that do? You're sort of stuck between the celebrityness of the whole thing and wanting to keep going and not drop out of the race, but you can't put something out that people are going to measure favorably compared to your past work. Like, what do you do? It seems like that would be a tough position to be in for somebody like her.
She could have solved all of this just by spending more time in BC. She spent way too much in Los Angeles. This whole album is soaked in Los Angeles. The materialism, the rushed cocaine fueled. What am I trying to say? Tampa. Please get back to the garden.
See, I feel though in 1988, anyone that would have gone back to the garden would have been looked at as really passé. Because I think, this album wasn't a hit, but it also, at least she was trying to do something that was at least attempting to be current. I feel like some of the other musicians that were still trying to go the folksy route were really looked at as nobodies at the time. So at least I feel like her attempt to be current kind of kept a certain level. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Jamie, your hand is up.
I mean, apart from Tracy Chapman, who it did really well.
Yeah, but that was the new generation of, though,
Yeah, and she was the breath of fresh air.
Yeah,
really.
And the Indigo Girls, you had like Ani DeFranco starting a couple years later.
James Taylor, he never faltered. He continued. I mean, his production style changed in the 80s and 90s, but you still got a great story and a great vocal. And, I'm not sure what Reuben was saying, what does somebody like Joni, or Jim was saying, actually, excuse me, what Jim was saying, what does a person like this do when the culture is shallow and you've already done your best work?
Right.
And I do take that to heart, because I think every artist reaches a point where they know their best work is behind them. They can't say that because that's bad PR, but
Sure.
they kind of know that they had their finger on the pulse for however many years, and the pulse, the culture has moved on, and so now what do you do? I really get that. I think I can think of other artists who are in that same predicament.
So if Joni Mitchell was in Madonna world, this would be her MDNA.
Well, Madonna was kind of, and you know more about her than I do, by far, but Madonna was more of an actor and a video artist than a music artist, in my view.
And definitely not a writer. I mean, obviously.
Well, or a singer, really,
Yeah.
And I don't dislike Madonna. I think she made something of herself that was remarkable, but it wasn't built on poetry, and it wasn't built on melody and vocal chops and interesting guitar concepts, and it wasn't built on any of that. So Madonna was kind of like the perfect 80s artist, because she could fit into kind of a video production mode, and the outfits and the hair and the makeup and everything, and she was totally into it. Joni happened to be very photogenic, so she could do some of that. She could go along with the photo shoots and even the video things, but it never quite came out as commercial. It came out as a thinking person's idea of a video.
Right. What was the James Taylor album that was current? Was it Never Die Young? Was that the name of the one that's around this era?
Yeah, in the 87, 88, I think it was.
No, that was a big hit.
Flag, wasn't it Flag? Something like that?
Flag was about 1980.
I mean, the album that I liked from that era the most is Sting's Nothing Like the Sun. There's some amazing songs on that. It didn't need to be a double album, but there's some wonderful tunes and some snarky political ones. History Will Teach Us Nothing. God, we do that tune. It's just a fabulous commentary on how we just repeat our mistakes. So there were good records being made. Peter Gabriel, of course. And Peter Gabriel was, and I have to interject that I saw Genesis when I was 13. I saw the Foxtrot tour with Peter Gabriel with the fox's head and his wife's red dress on. Me and my dad went in the Oxford New Theatre and saw Genesis, and it was a life changer, because rock bands up to that point had been just kind of greasy long hairs banging guitars out, and here was this theatrical thing with this whimsical kind of world that he created. And actually, come to find out, it was all because they needed time to set up the synth patches and Steve Hackett's guitar sounds. There was no presets back then, so to set up for the next song took about 3 or 4 minutes. So just like Joni with her storytelling, Peter Gabriel became a great storyteller, and he'd make up these wild kind of dreamlike stories that held you in trance while the guys set up their patches. And so when Peter Gabriel was in the 80s, he was absolutely made for video. He had like Sledgehammer, of course, probably the best one. It's fantastic. It still looks fantastic. It's a good slamming song, but the video makes it, right? Because it's so creative.
Those were the folks I went to work with when I was in England.
Yeah. So we all love Joni Mitchell, and she can do no wrong, but she just wasn't quite built for this period. And so I view her commercial failures of the 80s as kind of righteous, actually, because she wasn't really the right person for the job at that time.
I think of some of her other contemporaries like Stephen Stills, David Crosby. I can't even think of anything they're doing at the time. But then I think of Neil Young, and he had a resurgence at the end of the 80s, right?
Trans?
No, that was early 80s. I feel like late 80s is when he started coming out with like Freedom. Then
Old
it was
ways.
Yeah. All right, so we have Chris, we have David, we have Bob, and then Sue.
I was going to ask if anybody had any recollection as to where was Geffen Records at this point. This was only her second release on Geffen, correct?
Third.
Now, he hadn't yet sold the company back to Warner at this point, or was that in the works? I'm just trying to see we're trying to figure out is whether or not there was anything in her mindset that was, God, let me get 10 tracks and get out of this thing, you know?
It was not her last.
No, it was not her last Geffen. That's for sure, because let's remember that the lessons we're hoping are not ingrained in her process. She definitely paid attention to, because the next record out was, quote unquote, the startling return to form. She recognized that there were people, and I use this phrase again, up in her stuff, and she reclaimed her control over quite a bit of it again, and the process. So, we might be, worried why this is all wrong, but you know what? It's serving a very, very useful purpose in the grand scheme. Bad dreams are good in the great scheme. Is that the line?
I do feel where Joni goes through here was an organic just journey that she was on, and not something that was manipulated.
I would agree. She would probably come to realize that she found herself in a place that she, did not recognize. The old talking heads. You can find yourself in a shotgun shack, and you say, "How did I get here?" I think that she probably woke up at the end of this record and said, "How did I get here?" And then moved.
My God, what have I done?
All right, we have David, then Bob, then Sue.
Yeah. When I've been hearing people talk about the change in the 80s, the cultural change in the 80s, that somehow she had a pulse in the zeitgeist in the 70s, but not in the 80s. And she was the zeitgeist in the 70s. I mean, she made it by being herself. And I don't know. I want to say I have phenomenal respect for her ability to survive as a star. Anybody who's actually kept their humanity through this whole stardom trip is just astonishing. I think that's really hard work and quite something. And so I can't say I blame her for getting lost, but and maybe I'm just repeating what Jim said about go back to BC. I don't quite know why she wasn't able to say, I don't have to play this way. I can play my way, the way I have always played. I don't know.
All right, so was it Bob, Sue, and then Jim?
I mean, I don't have anything, but if I have the floor, I'll just throw out at number one. Is that where we are? Number one? I'm losing track.
Yeah, we're only two songs in.
Jesus Christ. So one cover by Ronan Green in 2016.
All right.
I'm out.
Sue.
Okay, so I picked up a cheap CD of Beginning of Survival, and I listened to it for a week in my car, and it was such a different take on all these songs because it was in a different format. I think remastered. I don't know. I mean, it was more than just some of the like Lakota and and then there were songs, Three Great Stimulants, but it was all her basic protest songs, I guess you
Hmm.
would say. And I totally agree that this is an angry period for Joni. Um, I feel like there was, even though there was a cacophony of people and all these different things going on, I think that the most important thing for her was to get her anger out, and especially on uh, Lakota, and also some of the Three Great Stimulants, and Snakes and Ladders and all that. I'm going ahead of myself here now, but I don't know what her motivation was, and I don't know what she was thinking about or what was going on with her. All I know is that over the years, over many, many years, she suffered a lot. And there were certain periods during her marriage that were really painful too, and you know, I don't know where her head was at this point in Chalk Mark and Rainstorm, but I feel like there were certain things going on that she still went back to, like Tea Leaf Prophecy is definitely a picture of her, her life when she was young, that also had a lot of pain in it,
Yeah.
And I see that through a lot of the songs during the 80s, that it's a different type of pain. It's not like the it was more global in that sense, I mean, maybe it was still personal to her, but she was shooting it out, and I mean, I'm not saying that this is a perfect album. It's not even close. I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to rate it at the end, but there are some definite songs in this album that I really love, and I really don't know, you know. I mean, we can read all the articles, we can read all that stuff, but we don't really know what's really going on, especially with an artist like her, I mean, she may have been stripped clean, I mean, and not even been able to, like, this was the best she could do during this, and it wasn't really that bad. I didn't, it was pretty good, some of it. So I just feel like, maybe I'm trying to defend her in some way, but I'll never forget listening, because I didn't like any of her compilation discs. I was like, I have all that stuff. Why do I have to buy it again? But there was something about that disc that really hit me. And all those songs were like so important. So just wanted to say that.
All right, so we have Jim and then Jamie.
Okay. Yes to the compilations. I'm one of those people who already had everything. The compilation that really struck home for me was Songs of a Prairie Girl, because we got to see even more of Joni skating on the river. It sounds silly, but to open that up and see that, it was just felt like a real gift. So that was the compilation that hit home for me. And I agree, we're sort of way off topic tonight, because we're only 2 songs deep, but that's okay. And I'm going to make it worse by talking about James Taylor for a quick minute. I've got his playbook here, and James had an album in '79 called Flag, which had 2 completely different sides. It was like 2 sides of James Taylor, and the deep greens and blues. That's obvious what that is. And then the other side was bright red and yellow. And so the idea was it was a flag, and it was blue green on one side, and red and yellow on the other. And the electric James was just kind of awful. And I say that as somebody who has everything from Flying Machine up to Before the World. And so he was asked to talk about that, like, James, what happened? And he said, well, I found out that my audience doesn't really want to open the album and see a picture of me looking like I'm constipated. So Mr. Taylor figured out in '79 that he needed to get back to the garden, and he pretty much did. Dad Loves His Work, That's Why I'm Here, and Never Die Young were 80s albums. That's it for me.
I just want to mention I can't stand James Taylor. Give me the risk takers. Give me the drum machine.
I forgive you.
After what he did to Carly. All right, Jamie.
Just furthering on from what Sue was talking about, I was just reading of all the newspapers, the Daily Mail, about how just before this she lost a baby. She really wanted Larry Klein to be the father of a child, but he was away in England recording with Peter Gabriel, so it felt like, she comes across to England and he's got these 3 songs, and as a kind of like, maybe we need to keep our minds busy off our personal affairs and make an album, and it feels like this, and then the being sued by her dentist or something like that, and various other things, and being sued by her the state of California for something like a 90% tax on her income as a musician. So all of these things just don't work well on the psyche, I don't think. You know what I mean? As an artist, they kind of whittle you away as a person, and needed to get back to the garden and just spend some time in BC and all that kind of stuff. So I'd completely go with that theory, Sue. So it's possibly timely that she did it because it needed to be done, and it wasn't the last Geffen album, because I think the next one's the last Geffen album, wasn't it? But she, at the same time, she did some amazing paintings. Once in a While on a Big Blue Moon, the painting of Larry Klein and the cat was painted in 1987. So it's kind of like, it's a really kind of like she used her visual art to get back to her own garden. So it's a really interesting way that the music wasn't doing it for her. That's me done.
See, I'm gonna have to come on and defend Joni Mitchell really quick. I know as a musician, like I've released 23 albums, and some of them are just terrible. Maybe all of them are terrible, actually. But I know there's nothing more fun for me as a musician than trying a whole new palette of sounds and a whole new box of audio paints. And while this might not be the favorite album for us to listen to, I bet it was really fun for her to program a drum machine one time just to see how it sounded and to layer 50 guitars. Maybe it's not an experiment that worked, but she got to experience doing that in the studio. And as a creative person, I bet it was fun for her. She'd done the one guitar, one piano in the studio. So as a person, and Joni Mitchell does seem to me as a studio, she enjoys the studio. So I bet the opportunity to experience all these gadgets and stuff, like Dave was saying, that everyone did in the 80s, she had to have her turn at it. And I'm sure it was a good time for her, even though it might not be our favorite album, but it is one of my favorites. All right, Dave.
Next song, please.
Oh, poor Jamie. Sorry, Jamie. Just tapping into a kind of a longer topic that we've talked about for months is Joni and technology. Going back to the kind of farty synthesizer on the Jungle Line, and see, you can point to half a dozen instances of where she kind of ruined a perfectly great concept and a great song by dabbling with technology. She doesn't really do it well. It's the VG8, it's sort of not as orchestral as she thinks thinks it was. And
I will agree with that.
And I think this album is full of that. It's like, oh, look at this new thing. I could try that. And when she gets away from gear and plays an instrument, for real, that's when her music always works. But she gets lost in these these kind of side alleys of gear, and she did back in the 70s too. I mean, I think of Shadows and Light. That's kind of this wheezy ARP string machine, and it's mixed in mono. Why? This is this grandiose concept of this, choral masterpiece ending this brilliant album, and it's this dreadful sound using this dreadful keyboard, and nobody was there to say, oh, no, don't do that, because she was, assuming full creative control. And maybe that carried on through the Larry Klein years. It's like, well, I'm going to do this because I'm Joni Mitchell. But nobody could really say, yeah, I don't think that's working. Maybe Henry Louis could, but he wasn't around anymore. So anyway, just to encapsulate my concept is Joni and technology, not good.
All right, do we have any other thoughts on number one? All right, you know what? I'm going to make a call. Let's move on to the next song.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's keep moving. Because otherwise, we're already 2.5 hours in almost. We're only on the third song. All right, so you guys have been waiting. Now it's my turn to sing. Yeah, ho. Lakota. Oh,
Iron Eyes.
I just want everyone to know that I totally agree. I agree with everything everyone's saying. I just have a soft spot in my heart for this album. So I work with the homeless population. So my goal in life is to fight for the underdog. And for God's sakes, if there's ever been an underdog, it's Chalkmark in a rainstorm.
Well, I like Lakota.
Hey. Okay, Lakota.
What,
Mark.
you know the
I have to say something, Jamie. Don't let this discussion change your view. You know how sometimes in these discussions we end up liking an album better. Don't let this diminish your love for this album.
Nah, I'm a punk rocker at heart. I rebel. I'm a rebel, so I'm like, I love it even now. I love it even more. I'm loving this though. This is so much fun. Okay, so let's get into Iron Eyes Cody. Mark, take it away.
Well, do you know the story behind how he wound up on that record? She was invited to go to some exhibition of Native American art and artifacts. And while she was there, this friend of hers that took her said, would you like to meet Iron Eyes Cody? And she said, sure, why not? And she talked to him and she asked him if he could sing some song she could use on this record. And he started singing something, and she said, can you come with me right now to the studio and put this on a record? So she kind of pulled him out of a museum or exhibition. I guess it was not a museum.
All right, Bob.
But wasn't his real name was like Leonard Stein or something like that? I don't think he was a real Native American.
Yeah, he wasn't, was he? Didn't they prove that he wasn't?
He was, from the commercial where the Indian sheds a tear about the litter.
Yeah.
Espera Horta de Corti. Espera Oscar de Corti.
Yeah. So, but I will say about Lakota is one of two songs on this record that I appreciated, not from these recordings because they're terrible, but from covers.
All right, the suspense is killing me. How many people covered Lakota?
Two.
Two?
Yeah. Rachel Z Trio, which came out in 2002, a really, really great Joni tribute album. I highly recommend it. It came out the same year that the bloated double CD of all the orchestrated stuff came out. It's much, much, much better. And she did Lakota instrumentally with a jazz trio, and it really finds the depth and the beauty of the music that gets lost in this overlaid 18,000 things coming at you at one time. So yeah, that was nice. And the other one was our friend Kimberly Ford did it on a live recording with her band. She's singing it with a live band, and the energy is there. The song is there. It's great. But this recording, not so much. I mean, I totally lost it. I had no idea what the song was about because it's got so many layers and so much stuff and junk. It's like, you can't find the rose because there's 18,000 weeds that you can't pull out and dig out to see the beauty that's there.
There are a lot of layers on the song. And I will admit that I've driven in my car and sing the just that part through the whole song. All right, Reuben.
That's one thing that I like about this song. I have spent 30 years, which sounds more obsessive out loud than it did in my head, but 30 years listening to this track and trying to separate the layers in my head. There are so many pieces to this, and I still can hear new things often when I listen to this song. I listen to a lot of these in the car these days. I don't even have a good stereo at home, but I think that's one of the things about this song that makes it so great is that it's so squashed and full, and it just sort of clatters along. And this is one of the ones where I think the background vocals are so great. There are so many different sets of background vocals on this that are really good, but you have to listen really closely to sort of separate them out and hear what she's doing. I think it's really cool, and I think the lyrics are really good in a way that this could have come off as really sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of amateur in a way, and I think somehow she manages to pull it off so it doesn't, which is remarkable.
I feel like some of those notes she hits, like the mother, that's the kind of one of the last times she hits notes that high in her discography, wouldn't you say? Because by Night Ride Home, she definitely lost the upper layer of her. Dave.
Yeah, we were just listening to this a few hours ago, and she starts off this song with the Indian or Native American song that is introducing this idea of the indigenous people and the earth, and then bang comes in the synthesizer. It's like she undermines the whole earthiness and kind of back to the garden thing that she had just about created, and instantly here comes uptown digital synthesis. It's just like, she's just, somebody was unaware of the dichotomy there, I think. I mean, if you're going to write a song that is celebrating the Native American peoples and the travesty of what's happened to them, you really don't want to do it with synthesizers.
Yeah.
Or a fake Native American doing the thing at the beginning either. I don't know if she knew that at the time or not, but he wasn't even Native American. Like he was phonier than the synthesizers.
Seminole Wind, this was not.
I could say that she was doing it for a thematic reason, though, which was, paving over brave little parks. This is how she's establishing that artifice, that this creation, this authentic person, this indigenous peoples were being overrun. So, I mean, is that so far-fetched? If she treated it like a sport?
I see where you're going with that, and I in that case, she was trying it on Ethiopia as well, and I'm thinking, well, if that was the concept, it didn't work. Emotionally, it doesn't work. If you in an interview, if you say, well, I wanted to write about the plight of the Native American people, so I wanted to dramatize that by having something very cold and electronic. Okay, well, that sort of works in an interview, but it just doesn't work sonically. It's just like you've just undermined the truth of the ancient people.
I think it works filmically to be
Yeah.
able to compare and contrast with, with that. But you're right. Maybe that's too esoteric a concept to employ.
All right, Sue, your hand is up.
I just wanted to say my favorite line in this song is, quietly like rattlesnakes and stars, we have seen the trampled rainbows in the smoke of cars. That gives me chills. I mean, I like this song a lot.
I feel like it's a banger, personally. I like it's a banger. I like we never sold these black hills to the missile heads. I love that part.
Yeah. I like to sing along.
All right, Mark.
Has anyone else ever been bothered by the lines pity, or just the statement pity me? I don't know. If I were Native American, I don't know that I would be very pleased by that repeated throughout the song.
Yeah, it's not woke.
Yeah, definitely not. All right, David.
Yeah, I mostly just want to say I like the song, and I kind of have no problem of all I have no problem with the overproduced parts of it. I hear the pity me things, and even saying I am Lakota. It's like, are you, dear?
Yeah.
A little much to me, but I kind of think I'm okay with it. I don't know. She pulls it off as far as I'm concerned.
After you've been the only black man at the party.
Oh, gosh. All right, well, do we have any other thoughts on Lakota before we let Iron Eyes Cody leave the building? Because I think Wendy
I just Googled him, and apparently he was of Italian descent. He sort of tried to claim to be a Native American or part Native American later in his life, and his sister said that he was Italian.
He was Sicilian.
I am lasagna.
Oh, and then
Pity me.
Jamie, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it's full of great lines, I think, or great imagery at least. And I am wondering about the pity me, actually, because it's not asking people to pity them, but the sun, the moon, the water, which is pure shamanic kind of incantation. For me, I am lasagna. So I'm okay with it. Yeah, the whole ionized Cody thing is like, yeah. I once, when I was in youth theatre, we took a play to St. Petersburg in Russia. So imagine, if you will, a British theatre company, youth theatre company, taking a play to St. Petersburg in Russia. They were expecting kind of Robin Hood or something English, or maybe Shakespeare. We took Hiawatha. And I played the title role, and it was only when we got there when they asked, why are you doing Hiawatha? Why did you bring Hiawatha? And the director, I mean, this was the 80s. This was the 90s. And nobody had anything about cultural appropriation or anything like that. And here I was, a half Malay guy who happened to have long hair, being coached by an American who was also, I think, half American, Italian, and Chinese. But his wife was Sue, and the wife wasn't teaching us anything, but he was teaching us all of the kind of Native American kind of things. And the wife was like, "Yeah, that's how it's done," kind of in the background. So the story of Ionized Cody, it's like, why are there these people who profess to be native whatever, but not. And why is an English youth theatre company doing Hiawatha in St. Petersburg? But yeah, so it brings up a lot of memory, and I basically for the thing I lifted his vocable to be in the show, because it was like, well, he's, we're as Native American as he is, so I might as well use it in the play.
At least you weren't doing Chekhov.
True.
All right. Any other thoughts on Lakota? Reuben.
Two things. Jamie, that is the best story I've heard anybody tell in any of these podcasts so far, is about your production of Hiawatha. That was awesome. And I just was thinking of the video, which I'm pulling up on YouTube right now. The video, I can't find it, was a little, in hindsight, kind of cringy too. I remember it. I think it was in black and white, and it's all Joni with what I assume are Lakota people sort of wandering through the crowd with this pretty silver jewelry on, mouthing "I am Lakota," when clearly she's not, because everybody else is. But somehow with her, and I don't think I'm a Joni apologist when it comes to these kind of things, with the Don Juan's cover and everything else. I think somehow her intent seems to rise above it, and I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but what does anybody else think? And maybe this could take us down a really long road that we don't need to go down right now. But
yeah, she gets a pass. Sorry, go ahead.
They objected to the line, "Poor drunk bastard falls." They didn't want to sing. They were like, "We don't like that line."
Hi, Chris.
I just wanted to say that if there was one song that probably she could have taken the opportunity to have recontextualized for Travelogue, this was the one. She could have really made a big difference in terms of, Stu, you're so right. The lyric in this is extremely powerful, extremely dense. The speed at which it is propelled, unfortunately, it so works against it, and the layers of production bury it completely. This was one that really should have been made epic for Travelogue. I think they could have really simplified it, slowed it down, and really made it absolutely potent had they done so. Oh well, somebody will do it maybe.
Did they do anything off this album on Travelogue? Off the top of my head, I feel like no, but all right. Any going once, going twice?
Was Tea Leaf on Travelogue?
Mm-mm. Anybody have Weird Al's number so he can do his version of lasagna?
That was on Herbie.
Yeah, Tea Leaf is on the Herbie River album, and a wonderful version that actually made you go, "Oh wow, what a good song!"
And it's also on the Prairie Girls.
We're getting there. Let's get there.
Yeah.
All right. So there were two covers of Lakota, correct?
Yes.
All right. Iron Eyes Cody is leaving the building, and Wendy and Lisa have just arrived. The Tea Leaf Prophecy, Lay Down Your Arms. We're telling the story of Joni's parents, their courtship during the war. Wendy and Lisa sing the same line over and over and over and over and over and over. What do y'all think of this song? This is probably one of my lesser favorites on the album, but I did like the Herbie Hancock version, of course, much better. All right, Bob, then Sue.
Yeah, so this is the other song where I didn't like it when I heard it. If you remember my opening comments, because the album was 46 minutes long, I had to cut a song when I recorded the CD to cassette tape. This was the song that I cut because it just study war no more, study war no more, study war. I mean, it didn't mean anything. I thought it was terrible. It was a drone. It's actually a very, very, very good song, which became clear to me when it was covered first in 2002. No, 2000 and let me look at my notes. Tea leaf 2003 by Chris Williamson and Holly Near did a duet of it. Very stripped down, guitars and vocal, told the story. I thought it was beautiful. All of a sudden, I understood the song. It was great. And then, of course, the Herbie Hancock and Joni version on River, the Joni Letters, raised it to the next level. So, yeah, it would no longer be the song I would cut on making the transition. Dancing Clown would be the one that I would cut.
Oh, hey now. All right, Chris.
This is an important song for her, canon, just in terms of understanding who she is, where she came from, her family life, the insular sort of family unit that she grew up with, the relationship between their parents, a little bit about Myrtle's character in terms of what she, was willing to roll with in her life, her father's kind of more relaxed, take on almost everything. I mean, we'd seen bits and pieces of it already, given to us and, and For the Roses and earlier, but this, I think, really made it special for them as a couple, to see a little bit of sort of the context into which she then was raised. So I think it's an important song. I remember liking it very, very, very much because it felt somehow more personal than anything else on the record. And for me, that this is where I got some traction, at least, as I listened through it.
All right, Sue, and then Jim.
Yeah, like Bob. I mean, I really liked this song when I first heard it too, but when we would go down to the New Orleans Joni Fests with Paz, I wish Paz was here because he would remember who these guys were. But there was this band. It was like a Celtic band. It was just two guys, and they were playing. One was playing like some kind of Celtic instrument. The other guy was playing guitar, and they did a very intense version of this song. I was floored. It was so beautiful.
Wow.
It was kind of like, the Irish, maybe, the Clancy brothers or, somebody like that. But it was even more intense than that. It was a very, very emotional version. And I think that they liked the song because of the anti-war sentiment in it,
Mm-hmm.
And they did a beautiful version. And every time I think about this song, I think about that performance. And
I wish I could have seen that.
yeah, it was really, really great. And I think that this song is the whole biographical thing is really important for kind of softening Myrtle a little bit. Like I always thought of her as such a she really, was a strong voice, in Joni's life. But here they are, and actually, there's a couple lines in the song like "Don't have kids when you grow old." I mean, that's pretty harsh.
The whole nuclear thing, absolutely,
yeah.
Yeah.
But then for recently, I've been thinking a lot about how each generation has a horrible thing to go through, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
And my granddaughter only knows how to go to school with a mask on. She's in kindergarten, and when Joni was growing up, there was war, and she heard about Hiroshima.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like that is very amazing, and comes with you throughout your life. Including my daughter being on a roof in Brooklyn at college when the towers went down.
Wow.
Like she could not go back to school after that. She actually had to transfer to a different college because she just couldn't deal with it anymore. That was very traumatic for her.
There's definitely a lot of generational trauma.
Yeah, Absolutely. And, and my grandparents went through the Great Depression. There's a lot of information I got from that. But yeah, I feel like this song is really, really important. And I agree that there are better versions of it that really bring out the poignancy in it. So.
Yeah, the more we're talking about this song, the more I realize I love it more than I initially said. There's some really pretty lines in there. All right, Mark and then Dave.
Well, I like this song a lot too, and I think it's really kind of beautiful, but I never really had a problem with the repetition of study war no more. That's a choral backing. And if you think of it in terms of like a piano figure or something that gets repeated through the chorus of a song, it's the same thing. It's just that it's a vocalization.
Is it
So
echoing down by the riverside, Mark, do you think?
What's that?
Is it echoing down by the riverside? Ain't gonna study war no more down by the riverside.
Probably. I don't know. And it makes a comment about what she's talking about, study war no more.
I do have to say
the war has affected these people's lives hugely, like Sue was saying. I mean,
yeah.
Her parents probably would never have met. Maybe they never would have married. Yeah. And I also heard somewhere that Myrtle told her that actually because as a child being so impossible. I don't know if that's true or not, but don't have kids when you get grown.
I do have to say I'm a really big fan of Wendy and Lisa's. I have all their solo albums. So when I saw them on the liner notes before I heard the song, I was really excited that they're on the album. And that's the second Prince connection on this album, because I read somewhere in an interview recently that Joni told another story about My Secret Place that it was for a Prince movie. Did anyone read that article? I'll look for it. It went across my radar somewhere. All right, Chris, and then Jim.
Bob.
And Bob?
No, I have the invisible hand. I'm like the invisible hand of the free market up here. No, I mean, my Joni wife Sue said a lot of what I wanted to say. All I'll say is that it's kind of interesting, if you look at the song Little Green, about her and her earlier generation, and then this song contrasted with her and her mother. It's just kind of an interesting thought. That was all I had to add, because Sue covered the don't have kids when you get grown. That would be a hard thing to hear your parent say, Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to have the Jewish mom says, "Oh, I want you to have a kid who hates you as who you hate as much as I hate you." That's one thing. But I mean, when you hear it directly, "Oh, don't have kids. This is my advice to you. Don't have kids." It's like, well, I'm your kid. What is this telling me? And another thing is, her vocal on this record, I mean, maybe you'll disagree with me, but it sounds a little thin and reedy on this particular song. It's not a pretty vocal. It doesn't have some of the tenderness that maybe this song should have as a child singing about her childhood. That's it.
All right, David, then Jim.
Just because nobody's said it, I just want to refer to "Let the Wind Carry Me." So there's another
yeah.
about her parents.
All right, Jim.
Let's see. Okay, in school, I think I said before that I took a course, a literature course on mothers and daughters, thinking I was going to meet girls. And one of the themes that kept coming up in there was that girls and their mothers have an awful tough time when the daughters are in their teens and in their 20s. And then eventually, the daughters often come back around and go, maybe mom wasn't so bad. And up until I think probably this song, Myrtle was kind of portrayed as maybe a shrew. Mm. And there's songs about there's a story that Nash tells about going home and meeting Myrtle, and they couldn't sleep in the same bedroom. And anyway, and she sweeps out the garage every week or vacuums it, I think, something like crazy, and takes the dust off the top of the door frame, of the door. She would open the door and then dust the top of the door. And yet here, Joni has got some, well, what did Sue say? Tenderness? I don't remember her word. She had a great word for it. And then Joni kind of, this is kind of a great, it's kind of a great portrait song here. It's not Nathan Lafreniere, it's Molly McGee,
Mm-hmm.
And two more things, and one of them is nothing about him ticks her off. And I thought that is a very telling way, that's one of her great lines, I think, because she's saying, on the one hand, Myrtle is kind of a snot, right? Difficult. We'll just say difficult. Myrtle is difficult, and she accepts her husband because, well, nothing about him ticks her off. I think that's pretty clever. That's a Joni-esque observation right there.
For most people, that's a pretty low bar.
That's what you call damned with faint praise.
I know, but it's almost like the Jewish mother that Bob was just talking about, like, oi, I'm not so crazy about him, but, nothing about him ticks me off. It's like she's claiming that she has very little feeling about him, but
And he looks so cute in his uniform.
yeah, there are little observations there where Joni just kind of like thinks, yeah, and she said something like, maybe this isn't going to work, but he looks so cute in his uniform. I don't remember the exact thing. And the last observation I have here is that the refrain is about, she plants her garden in the spring, he does the winter shoveling, and so you can see the wheels going round and round, and the seasons go round and round. And she's seeing that in her parents for a change, instead of just being all lost in her own world. So I think there's that it's a good portrait song.
I also like that at the end of the day, we can ponder the meaning of life in the universe. But at the end of the day, the wash needs ironing and the fire needs stoking. And that's what it all comes down to. All right. Any other thoughts on, okay, Dave.
Actually, the point that I was going to make, Jim kind of made about that great line about nothing about him ticked her off, and he looks so cute in his uniform. That's sort of one of those fabulous little capsules, like the priest came to the airport, he was wearing his father's tie. It's just this, 2-line, sketch of a person. Like, you get everything you need to know in 2 lines. And so I do think that is a fabulous moment on this record, and makes this song stand out, because who would say that about while they were alive, at least? Who would say that about their mother? But she did, and it was presumably dead on. Just this fabulous pencil sketch of the thing that she liked about her father was didn't tick her off too bad, and looked cute in his uniform. Is that good enough for me? It's like says a lot about the maybe Canada. I don't know. Maybe he said it about the 40s. Who knows? Or rural Canada. But I do think that's a pithy moment lyrically, and I don't think there are many of them on the record.
One of my favorite moments in the song is the synth lover in me, the synth pop lover, where there's this one part in the verse where the synth rises up, where she's like, "These nights are strong and soft," and it just gives me chills every time I hear it. I love it. All right, Chris.
Echoing what Dave is saying, fantastically efficient portraiture, not only of her parents, but of herself, because she is owning to sharing the genes and putting herself within this dynamic, this family dynamic, and it's a beautiful thing the way she's written it out. I do want to also point out that same section that you just pointed out, Jeremy. Her voice breaks. She does it a couple of times. And, I think somebody described it as reedy earlier, but she allows that imperfection and places it so perfectly that you feel just how quiet and intimate that moment is. These nights are strong and soft. The way she whispers that is it's breathtaking. It really is a beautiful performance.
It's a very intimate thing to say about your parents too, which is, Joni. The other one more thing, and then I'll leave this alone because I know Bob wants to get onto Dancing Clown. I can't wait because we've heard snippets about this, Bob, but we've never actually had a venue where you could just run with it. So I'm ready to take notes. But the thing is that the criticism of Joni's mom is that she's kind of like prickly and pithy. And isn't her daughter just like that too? And I think Joni kind of like maybe saw a little bit of herself in Myrtle and was able to soften up her reflections on Myrtle a little bit. And look what we have here. We got a great portrait song. She got a song out of it.
All right. Any other thought? Oh, Mark. We're going to do Mark, and then we're going to move on to the next one because I want to be done with side one before 11 o'clock. Okay, we'll do Mark and Jamie, and then that'll be it.
I'll try to be quick. One thing that strikes me about this song is she says, "I'm leaving here, but she don't go." Harkens back to urge for going. I get the urge for going, but I never seem to go.
And to head
maybe that's like Chris said, owning the place and the family and owning some kind of similarity to Myrtle.
All right, and Jamie?
Just a quick one. Nobody's actually mentioned the prophecy, which is that she would meet a man within a week and they would marry within a month and she'd die a long and painful death, which is like, great, thanks. This is Myrtle's prophecy. She had her leaves read at a hotel. She was on a girly date and she had her tea leaves read. And this is the prophecy, and it's like, okay, wow. So, and apparently, 2 out of 3 ain't bad in terms of prophecies because she lived a long and happy life and died peacefully, I believe.
All right, so I feel like we can all agree that this is one of our favorites, if not favorite, on the album, right? All right, so as we move from our favorite, I can safely say that maybe coming up next is maybe some people's not favorite. And Bob, it seems like you have an association with the song, and I did receive an email from a friend of yours named, let me look here, Paul Maggio, who sent me an MP3 of a performance of the song that has been requested to be played on this podcast. So do we have
me and Dave did this song at his Joni Fest.
Do we have any objection from the artists themselves to sharing this piece of music?
How much do you want?
Oh, I was sent the whole MP3. I've got it ready to go.
No, how much money do you want?
Oh,
Bob, how much? What do you think it's worth?
I don't know. I've got a lot of bills coming up. I'm okay to hear a 3.5 minute song and take my lumps.
Okay. Well, here we go.
Well, considering the budget that Joni spent on the music video, all right. So let's share the screen here. Okay. Give me a second here. This has been in the works for a little while here, Bob. This was at a Joni Fest that this happened?
Yeah, it was at Dave's Joni Fest in California.
Okay.
Robin and I hosted a Joni Fest in 2009 up in the mountains of Idlewild. and and Sue was there. It was a very fun fest, and just as was a lark, I think Bob said, "Let's do some Dancing Clown, get it out." So we did.
All right, here we go. The debut on Phonogenics 101. Let's see if I can get this going on share sound. All right. All right, can everyone see that? Here we go.
Joni rock and roll song. This is the sign of the apocalypse, me doing this song. No, you couldn't call Jesse a babe in the woods. He's just weak on self-defense. 'Cause he's so thin-skinned he can't take a joke at his expense. You're a push-button window, says Rowdy Yates. I can run you up and down. Anytime I want, I can make you my dancing clown. Be my dancing clown. Dancing clown. Rowdy Yates is as bold as Joe. He's alright, chiding, sniding, bluff. Stuck in the romantic tradition of acting rough and tough. You're always charging through, says Jesse, nervous looking all around. Anytime I want, I can make you my dancing clown. You're my dancing clown. Dancing clown. Dancing clown. Oh, yeah. Share love found. Whenever love comes to town, someone's a dancing clown. Share love found. Whenever hearts start to pound, someone's a dancing clown. Down the street comes Tampa Susie. She's doll yellow, and top nice. You hear the swoosh of jungle blades and the crackle of northern ice. Hot damn, says Rowdy looking up. Yum, says Jesse looking down. How would you like to be her dancing clown? Be her dancing clown. Dancing clown. Be her dancing clown. Dancing clown. Na 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 na. Shayla fam. Whenever love comes to town, someone's a dancing clown. Ow, 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 ow. Shayla fam. Whenever hearts start to pound, someone's a dancing clown. Shayla fam. Whenever love comes to town, someone's a dancing clown. Na 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 na. Someone's a dancing clown.
Oh, Bob, that was amazing.
Now, there was
Great
the
guitar. That's all we can say was the guitar was great.
we think of the monumental
beauty.
the monumental moments of this podcast, the Paprika Plains discussion, the three great stimulants discussion, Bob and Dave's performance of Dancing Clown.
Gosh, that was so great.
Let me rush in here and say Bob can sing. Okay, it just wasn't his finest performance, but Bob can ordinarily sing really well.
I thought he did a great job.
Awesome, man.
I think that should be a permanent part of your repertoire, Bob.
I mean, the key was difficult. Plus, I think we had done some late night partying, so my vocal cords were already rubbed raw. But hey, jump in there and do the best you can.
That Joni Fest was bliss. Oh my God, it was so amazing.
It was really, really good. Yeah.
That was even more beautiful and terrifying than the original.
Well, I mean, you could actually hear all the words.
I know.
For
So
better-
we have Billy Idol, we have Tom Petty, we have Joni playing her broom in the kitchen with a cat in the video. Oh boy. Well, on to side 2.
Nothing more to say about that.
I mean,
I have one thing to say. Tracy Thorn, who was the singer, one half of Everything But the Girl, who I love, used to write a column. She might still write a column for the New Statesman. And she wrote a column years ago about how she collected in her mind little snips of songs that she goes back and replays because it's either a production piece or a vocal or something. And it made me realize that I do that too. I'm sure we all do. But one of my many Joni things like that is the way that she sings the swoosh of jungle blades and the crackle of northern ice. I love the way that line comes out. But that's all I have to say about Dancing Clown.
all right, David, I see your hand.
I just want to point out again the racist imagery. This time, really kind of gratuitous. That what's her?
High Yellow.
Yeah, she's High Yellow, but what I forget. She's somebody.
High Yellow Susie looking.
Last word, Susie. High Yellow with the crackle of jungle blades, and I'm sorry, the swoosh of jungle blades and the crackle of northern ice. It's like, yeah, there you are. Okay.
And written from a racing stubs or horse racing names.
Yeah, it was a newspaper. She didn't even know that Rowdy Yates was a character on Rawhide, the TV show. She found this newspaper and pulled all these horse names up, and then wrote this song with all these words in there. And it's a throwaway. Obviously, has not stood the test of time very well.
I do love this song as a piece of campy trash. Like it's so bad that I love it, but it's bad.
The video's fabulous. I love the video.
And Billy Idol's overdubs over the fade out are just excruciatingly, horribly great / terrible.
Come on. And his guitarist, Steve Stevens, is on this one track. And, if you listen closely enough, you can hear some really nice kind of Steve Vai 80s, this time of the season guitar playing. And I think he died in a plane crash shortly after this record, late 80s or early 90s. But he was a good guitarist.
Maybe it's a campy track from a campy era.
I bet Billy Idol's nervous. He's like, everyone else on the song is gone. I'm the
last man standing.
Tom Petty's gone.
They should really fear the archive.
Oh! Yeah, I heard there's a 20-minute version of this song. Kind of, it's like sweet, just like Paprika Plains, but in this one, Rowdy Yates comes back to the bar and then the band starts playing.
What is my next button? Next track.
All right. Well, anything else on Dancing Clown? Have we reached the low point of?
Is this the song that Bob Dylan asked her how she wrote it, and she said, "Oh, I wrote it from tickets from racehorses," and he went, "Oh, I wish I had that idea," or something like that.
No, it wasn't. Yes, this is the song, but what Dylan said was, "Yeah, I thought of that too, but I decided it was a bad idea."
All right. Well, we have survived side 1 of Chalk Mark and a Rainstorm. We're all still friends. Do we want to take a 5-minute break so we can refill our drinks and do the thing? All right, cool.
I just want to.
Dave had a quick thing to say that I think needs to be memorialized forever.
Well, Joni's inner editor, I think, was quite fierce for most of her her career, and not letting a cliche through or anything that was not concisely put. And on Dancing Clown, I think that inner editor was on vacation and completely very, very much missed.
Oh, we'll be back in a few. All right, we're back to Phonogenics 101, and we are here to finish out the 80s with Joni Mitchell. We are in side 2 of Chalkmark in a Rainstorm. We all survived Dancing Clown. And Willie Nelson's about to enter the building. And I love that's not Dancing Clown, it's Dancin', which is so 80s. But all right, for those who couldn't get enough of Cool Water, there is the CD single that has the radio edit. If you haven't had enough of just the album version. Who originally recorded the song?
Sons of the Pioneers.
Sons of the Pioneers.
All right, we have Willie Nelson coming in to sing about dry bones and sand. All right, Chris, is your hand up?
It is only because during the break we were between the sides we were having a good conversation about sort of production and how far it's come and what it adds and can add, and sort of a little bit of the history of production. I have to remark that I know, Dave, you don't give this record really high marks for production. There is something about this specific track that makes every piece of wood in my home vibrate. I don't know. I'm serious. And I mean that in a very good way.
Is it Willie Nelson?
This song sounds terrific to me on a purely sonic level. And I'm going to let you sort of educate me on why that is or isn't happening. But I do want to say that this track comes to us via Joni's playing cowboys and Indians with her friends and always wanting to be Roy Rogers, but being delegated to the Dale Evans role among her playmates. And I believe that her parents or her father was also a fan, as was my father, of the Sons of the Pioneers. So I grew up with their records as well. And let me tell you, my jaw dropped to the ground. I wasn't expecting for the Cool Water scene on the album cover to be that particular song. It shocked me. But Dave, tell me why or why not to love this track sonically.
Oh, it's the first song on the album that has a good mix. Literally in order. This is the first album that's got some low end and some punch to it. It's also louder than the other songs. And Beat of Black Wings and Reoccurring Dream is going to be louder yet. Hence my comment earlier about very strange mastering. Because the idea of mastering is a lot of things, but one of the things it's supposed to do is to let you listen through an album without having to reach for the volume control, because that doesn't mean that everything has to be the same volume, but there should be a contour of loud to soft that doesn't require you going, oh shit, I've got to turn this down.
Right.
Because if you set your listening volume for My Secret Place, and then you get to Cool Water, it's suddenly a lot louder, and then Beat of Black Wings is even louder. That's not good mastering, because you've already set your listening scenario and it's now being upset by that. Okay, so that's just a technical thing, but also this was probably mixed by somebody else at a different studio. So now we have the completely unrelated kind of sonic concept of this record, where you've got these rather cold, chilly, glassy kind of songs in the first half of the album, and then all of a sudden you got this thick, buttery, song coming out in side 2, and it's welcome, but why wasn't it all like that? Why couldn't it have all been warm and inviting?
I find myself listening still thinking, is this sonically dated, or were they being careful not to introduce some of those little Phillips of the time, into it? Did they keep this mostly straight? What does it sound like to you in terms of, whether or not it's dated? Does it sound dated to anybody here?
Well, Cool Water is extremely 80s, the production of it, but it's the best of the 80s. It's 80s where there's rich kind of dimensional space, and that was something that arrived in the early 80s, was the ability to create dimension, and that's because of the lexicon reverbs, basically. But the early part of the album is not the best part of the 80s. It's the kind of very brassy kind of sound of the 80s, and very flat too. It's huge. I mean, it's very bright and big and everything, but there's no front to back. And on Cool Water, you actually hear a front to back dimension, which is the first time you hear this on this record.
Thank you.
I always felt like she used the same synth at the beginning of Cool Water that she did in Magdalene Laundries.
Could be.
Because they kind of have a similar intro a little bit, and talk about two different universes of albums there. Now, it's not her choice of doing this was not so much a throwback to her youth, but for the environmental angle of the lyrics, which was very in keeping with the times and some of the themes of the album. Bob.
Yeah, and again, I mean, easy target. She needed songs for this record, so she pulled this one up. Sons of the Pioneer songs, which her dad liked. She would do My Best to You on Taming the Tiger in the subsequent years. I actually like the production on this song. I'm with Dave, and I like the duet. Her voice and Willie Nelson's voice really contrast really, really well. Unlike her voice and Peter Gabriel's voice that are so intertwined you can't tell which one is which. You can obviously tell Willie Nelson and Joni Mitchell. And it's almost like she's walking across the desert and, oh, look, here's Willie Nelson. Let's sing a song together. I mean, it's wacky, but it works in a wacky way.
It's a good wacky compared to.
I mean, she updates the lyrics, right? She updates the lyrics, but again, it's very easy to do.
Would you say this is a good wacky compared to the bad wacky that side one ended on?
This is Roadrunner and Coyote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This would have been a good video too.
Side one.
This would have been a good video too. Imagine her in the pink blanket and the hat, and Willie Nelson in the desert. It would have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really true to the cover of this song.
Missed opportunity.
Please show me where there's good water.
All right, Sue, your hand is up.
I can't remember what live performance it was, but in her early days, I think it was like around like the 70s or so, she started playing for free and started singing Happy Trails to You. And then she
that was the JT concert.
Oh, okay, yeah. And there's another nod to the cowboy singers, she was probably playing one of those songs when the music for free came to her. Yeah, that's what I think.
James Taylor calls it sort of a cowboy, and when he plays along with her, he keeps it in that kind of, sort of horsey kind of, clup beat clup beat clup beat kind of meter.
Right.
She takes it to a waltz, though. She takes it someplace else a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any other thoughts on Cool Water? All right. Willie Nelson's leaving the building. Killer Kyle is about to arrive. The mastering is about to get louder. Janet Jackson's about to cover the song, and Joni's in blackface again in the video. Beat a Bat Black Wings. Ben Orr from the Cars is on this one again, right?
Correct.
All right.
Really?
Isn't he the one doing the?
I'm not sure where he is. It's another bad production mishmash. Way too many layers of stuff.
In the songbook, once again, if you notice, they print the lyric, and I'm trying to get this really close to the camera, but please note that she points once again to that line. I'm just a chalk mark in a rainstorm. They when they printed it, the lyric, they made it red or pink.
Oh, they sure did. I think they might do that in the vinyl too. Let me take a look. Yeah, they do it in the gatefold also.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm looking at it.
The CD does not have that that highlight.
Well, I guess nothing was subtle about the 80s, was it? Overall, do y'all like this song or not like it? Mark.
I do like it, and I think it's one of her best, actually. Lyrically, anyway, I think it's one of the most powerful things she's ever written.
All right, now, Bob?
Yeah, so I'm with Mark. I think it's a great song. It's at first I thought it was all about Killer Kyle and that meetup she had in Fayetteville, North Carolina. But the more I studied about this song, there was a film called Looking Glass War in 1969, which is about a Vietnam vet whose girlfriend gets pregnant and then doesn't keep the child. And the more I read about this film, the more that I think the song is about 80% Looking Glass War and about 20% Killer Kyle. But yeah, I mean, that chord change, you know, I met a young soldier. His name was Killer Kyle. And the dum, bum. I love that chord change. I mean, that for me, when I heard this record, that was the highlight of the record, was that chord change that she comes back to again and again. Bum, bum. Jamie, you know what I'm talking about? That chord change, right? I mean, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I will say the first time I heard this album, I fell in love with the song the first time I heard it. And I still love it. I do love this song. What's she saying during the refrain? Johnny Angel? Is that what she's saying?
Yeah, Johnny Angel, or Charlie Angel.
Charlie Angel?
Which is a combination of Johnny Angel, the Shelley Fabares song, and Charlie, which was a Viet Cong phrase.
Okay.
I wish she wasn't playing the chord change on a synth. That's
true. That's true. Of course.
Because
I kind of like that. I kind of like that chord change, though. That big sort of epic. I like it the way it sounds.
Even on the synth, it's so good. Even on the synth, it works.
Yeah, I love it as it is, and I would also love to hear an acoustic piano version of this.
What's that other phrase that she's singing in the background? That da 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 da.
See, I thought that was Ben Orr. I thought that was Ben Orr doing that part.
What's that?
I always thought that was the Ben Orr contribution to the song, way in the background.
Are there words there?
Yes, there are syllables anyway. It's something that's.
It feels like a vocable. But it doesn't feel like words. It feels like a vocable, like a scat, you know, but not a scat.
So, Dave, I'm interested to hear what you think of this song because I would love the acoustic version from you and Reuben. But do you hate it or like it?
I don't hate it. I don't have any attachment to it. I don't feel any connection to it. But I think it's one of the better mixes on the record. And I like the title. You know, but it's very hard for me to embrace anything on this record, and it's not just because I like the 70s Joni. I also like some 80s music. I'm a big XTC fan, and all of their best work was in the 80s. but there's just something just really crowded and very impenetrable about most of the songs on this record. I mean, Cool Clear Water has some of that problem, but it's a little bit easier to hear into it. And Beat of Black Wings, we're right back to the density problem of too much going on all the time. I don't have any connection. I've heard this album dozens of times, and I couldn't recite any of the lyrics because they're all drowned out by intervening production, other backing vocals or instrumental parts that are getting in the way. There's no sense of foreground and background on this album. Everything's foreground, except there's tons of reverb. So yeah, it's foreground, but with wetness. That's not the same thing as foreground and background.
It's definitely a very busy drum program here.
Yeah, it is, and I think as Robin said earlier, the tunes that are the loudest on the album are the ones that Joni is credited with being the drum machine programmer on. So everything's political, right?
Sue, I see you have a hand up.
I just wanted to mention that there's some kind of drum on there that sounds like a helicopter. It's got like this some kind of weird like whipping to it, and which I'm thinking may have something to do with the Vietnam theme, but
Well, isn't the Beat of Black Wings, isn't that a helicopter?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I've heard it, but Janet Jackson's cover was pretty reputable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, she recorded it in 2000 for the Case of Joni Reprise Tribute CD, which never saw the light of day. Some of the tracks did, but this one never did. But yeah, it's solid. It's pretty true to form. Real similar to Joni's version, but maybe a better vocal because Janet's vocals were much younger at the time.
Right.
Than Joni's were.
She whispers it, though, practically, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Robin just looked up on the liner notes on this, and there's a talking drum, the African talking drum that you can change the pitch.
Oh.
You hold it underneath your arm, and it's got rope around around it. So when you squeeze the rope, the pitch of the drum goes up and down. So you could get those kind of sounds out of it. And apparently that's one of the sounds on this song.
All right, David.
Yeah, I just want to mention the video again. And what is it with those dancers? It's like, are they as bad as it seems to me that they are, or am I missing something? I mean, they really just look like a junior high school, costumes, and oh wow, ew, like really, ew.
This video is really, really terrible in several ways.
All right, Reuben.
I would never accuse Joni Mitchell of bloat, but I think the video for this song definitely falls into that category. It's tragic. Tragic.
Yeah, thinking of all the great video moments of 1988, this was not one of them.
I'd forgotten about the dancers until you mentioned it.
Yeah, me too.
Doing the pose.
It was all just shadow play without much thought.
Was that the whole? Is that the theme of the whole album? No.
No. I mean, there's one kind of like nice moment where she's wearing a lampshade around her waist, and it's like, oh, she's pregnant. Okay, cool. And then Joni appears as a dancer. You kind of go, really?
It's
so
just too much.
It's just a lot, I think.
Everybody wanted to be Duran Duran.
Yeah.
And it's her third F-bomb comes in the song.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
She can't even hear the fucking music playing. Okay, the first one is fuck your strangers, drive your bargains. What's the middle one?
Fuck
Fuck
it.
it.
Tonight
Oh,
more
fuck,
chance.
yeah, that's right. Oh. Joni doesn't give 3 fucks.
Well, she actually did give 3 fucks.
Oh, yeah, she did give 3 fucks.
That was all 3.
Oh, goodness. I fell down a rabbit hole watching like 1986, 87 interviews with Joni Mitchell. And she's talking about what a productive period this, like her and Klein were making some art. And it's interesting, like that this is what came out of that sentiment. But well, you win some, you lose some. Any other thoughts on Beat of Black Wings? Bob.
Well, just to get to the covers, the first cover of Beat of Black Wings was 1992. Andy Stochansky, who was in Andy DeFranco's band for a while, he did the first version of this. It was on Back to the Garden, the Canadian
yep,
from 92.
The infamous.
Yeah, and also was supposed to be on that record, number 1 from John Cody, but they didn't include that one. But they did include Andy Stochansky's version, which was very, very lo-fi, not what we hear on this record. But yeah, it's been covered 3 times. Beat of Black Wings.
I feel like we haven't heard the last of this song either. Someone's going to cover it again sometime.
My understanding is she's pretty proud of the song.
Yeah. She's like, I said fucking it. All right. Well, Killer Kyle's about to leave the building. Did I miss anybody? All right. I'm getting a little tired, so if I miss someone, just yell at me. I won't be offended. Killer Kyle's leaving the building, but Don Henley's about to roll up. She. Snakes and Ladders. We're kind of back to the theme of number 1 with people climbing the ladders and get to the bottom and climb back up and slide back down. And anyone want to start this one off? Bob, and then David.
So, I mean, I guess maybe Snakes and Ladders is a Canadian version of Shoots and Ladders. That was a game we used to play all the time. You'd roll the dice, and if you landed on a spot where you could climb a ladder, some ladders were big, some ladders were small. You climb up, and then if you roll the dice again, you go to a spot where there was a chute, a slide, and you'd slide on down back to another spot. And of course, the point was to get to the end of the game and win the game. So in America, where I grew, when I grew up and we used to play games all the time, it was Shoots and Ladders.
Yep.
I'm assuming Snakes and Ladders. You climb up a snake, which is kind of scary. If you're like me, I wouldn't want to climb up a goddamn snake, or slide down a snake and climb a ladder. So
the English version, Bob, is Snakes and Ladders, and so
Snakes and Ladders. Okay.
English Commonwealth, anyway.
Okay.
All right,
David.
I would say I like the song, but I don't think it's any good. I think it's really catchy and a lot of fun. And there's the one lyric. I always thought it was makes you hard just looking at her, and then I thought, no, it's breaks your heart just looking at her. And I thought that's really brilliant that there's this perfect elision between those 2 lyrics. It could be either makes your heart just looking at her, and then in the lyrics I said it makes you hot just looking at her but I think that there's this kind of vilification of the grasping, money-hungry, brainless woman, or not brainless, but and I just thought, come on, Joan, where's your empathy? I don't know. Again, it's back to Harry's House, which just seems to have much more depth and nuance and be less a cliche than this money-driven LA cliche.
And instead of big,
I like singing the song. I like hearing the song. I think it's fun.
Instead of bigwig financier, what kind of financier is it this time around?
I don't know.
Young Fogey.
Young Fogey
Finance.
I think, as Bob was saying earlier on, it's just kind of low-hanging fruit for material, criticizing, shallow people who are obsessed about their looks and trying to get into relationships that then fail because somebody moves on to the next attractive person. I mean, is that really good material for a song? It's not even really that good material for a TV show, although there's plenty of those. But I don't know. It just, we've come to expect a more insight from her, and we aren't getting it much on this.
I feel like if you're an intellectual, just avoid people like that.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that this is a single from the record.
Really?
Ditto.
Yeah, it was a pre-release.
I'm kind of with David. I did like singing along with it. I like how it goes from, I think, major key to minor key, right? As it gets into that weirder section towards the end.
Was the TV show Baywatch in the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very much so.
Yeah, I agreed about the board game. I also got this every single time I played the song. I in my mind, I'm going, when I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide where I turn and I go for a ride till I get to the bottom and I see you again. Look out. That's it.
What's that from?
Worked better for the Beatles.
Helter Skelter. Look out. Helter Skelter. It's the song that what did Bono say about Helter Skelter? That the song was stolen from the Beatles and they're going to steal it back. That was a great line.
And both Joni Mitchell songs that mention financiers have Don Henley singing on them, don't they? There's my little connection. Because didn't he sing backups on Dog Eat Dog, the song?
I think he did.
All right. Well, I guess the well doesn't run too deep on this song. Okay, Bob.
I would say if this is one of the 4 songs that Klein brought the music for, you've got Snakes and Ladders, Reoccurring Dream, Lakota, and Tea Leaf Prophecy. Those are all Klein's music that Joni had to put words to. So for whatever that's worth.
Reuben.
That's an interesting point, Bob. And so there were 4 songs on this that she didn't write the music and 2 that she didn't write the lyrics. That had never happened before either, had it?
Right.
Just an interesting thing to think about.
There's collaboration all over this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for me.
All right.
Well, this is one song that I actually liked. I think
I like it too.
I like the sound of it, and I think some of it's clever. Maybe it's not her most brilliant, in-depth writing, but I don't know. I do like it.
It's fun to sing along to.
I like the line, "To kiss her, he has to shave."
Yeah.
To kiss her, to kiss her, to kiss her, to kiss her.
Stapled into all his brain cells like a centerfold. Only one in all the world, like a Barbie doll.
Gave up happy hour.
Gave up happy hour for her. I love that line too.
Again, I mean, any good lyrics on this album is lost in the layers of the web of production. You know, you don't get any of that unless you read.
I've never had that problem, actually. Especially not on this.
I know every damn word to this album. Let's start from the bottom and go to the top. I'll sing for you guys.
I love in the gilded mirrors in the spring of fancy places where the black ties flatter. I love that. I love those 3 lines.
I like her little thing she does towards the end where it goes into the minor key, like, love is snakes and ladders. That little melody she has in the background. It's kind of eerie.
So that's more of those background vocals. You have have to sort through them all, but they're really good on this record.
I feel like she had a good time doing the background vocals, and I had a good time listening to them. All right. Moving on to the Reoccurring Dream. If you didn't have enough of the Joni sampling on Smoking Empty Try Another, we get another shot at this one. And I really feel like Joni felt like she was making a very profound statement here. And this was really a great experiment. Reuben, or no, Chris.
I think this is actually a really successful sonic collage. I think that this, the sound effects, the placement, they work the stereo image, very theatrically to create this entire space around it. It's practically 5.1. When I listen to it in stereo, it's really pretty well done, I have to say. If they were going to throw production at something, this was the one to do it. I wish they had maybe used some of those separation tricks to make clarity of some of the other tracks on the record. It might have.
All right, I have a new proposition for our Phonogenics 101 panel for everyone to say their favorite sample from the Reoccurring Dream. I think mine is that your new car, Charles? Isn't that
I
what
like that one too. I like that one.
Look, I don't
Well, in line with the song, my favorite would be "Who Cares."
Oh shit! I think Bob just won that one. Game over.
So Joni had her VCR set for 2 weeks recording commercials to be used in the studio for this track. So and maybe Dave could speak to this. She had VCR tape, go to the studio, take the samples of the commercials that she recorded and throw them on the record.
That's probably not even legal.
I know.
That's why she got sued so much in the 80s.
Yeah.
The Reoccurring Dream.
I mean, that's all copyrighted, corporate owned material. You can't just sample it and put it on your record.
Fair use, critique, comment.
Isn't fair use apply to academia?
Isn't there like a 7-second rule where if the sample is less than 6 or 7 seconds, you get to use it?
That may be
Well,
true.
or actually, it's not just academia. So long as you're pointing at it and making a point of it.
Oh, it's a parody. If it's a parody,
a parody or a critique. I mean, because the academic, you can actually. It used to be anyway. You could actually, Xerox an entire article and use it in your classroom, and you can't do that anymore. But
also, isn't it secondhand material now?
I think it's safe to say that all the anti-vaxxers out there don't feel that you can solve everything with science. Science.
More fulfilling, less frustrating.
Recognize this.
I agree with Chris that sonically this is one of the better tracks. It's definitely a more compelling mix. It's not. I don't think the song is worthy of it, but the actual impact of the listen is pretty impressive. Again, it's way too crowded with samples and voices saying things that you can't quite make out, but it's punchy, it's deep, it's got some dimension. So I got a feeling that Beat of Black Wings, this Recurring Dream, she says reoccurring, right? It's not recurring.
Reoccurring.
Yeah, she says reoccurring, so Myrtle wouldn't have liked that. And maybe Cool Water. I got a feeling those were mixed by either someone else or somewhere else because they just sound better.
Yeah, I do love her many layers of harmonies and background vocals in this one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think she wasn't very judicious in how to deploy that. She had like too many ideas all the time.
Right.
Well, somebody did, Larry Klein or whatever. I mean, we all know, those of us who make records, you can get a great idea and then you can overuse it to where it doesn't work anymore, and that's what this album is full of. And it was a little bit that way on some of the Dog Eat Dog material. I think Tax Free, and there's just all these things you can't quite hear them, but you feel like you ought to be able to listen to them. So I kind of crave the clarity of earlier records of hers, where I'm being invited into some poetry or a narrative or something. None of that really applies here. There's not really a narrative or poetry to be had here. So what you get is kind of wallpaper or stickers on a wall that are, here's this saying and here's this meme, and it's kind of like Facebook actually. Yeah. That's a rambling point, but as a composer, I think she was not even reaching for greatness on this. I think she was fulfilling an album contract, and there was some hip musicians at the time like Manu Katché that she had a chance to hire, so she got to use them, and they did a great job. In the service of what? Not a great album, but probably if you soloed the drums, wow, fantastic drum track. That's just not what you expect from Joni Mitchell. Hissing of Summer Lawns has got some very poor sounding mixes on them, but we love it because the songs are so good. So I'd much rather hear brilliant writing than brilliant mixing.
And I will say that Joni Mitchell at her best says things a way that no one else can or has ever said things. And I don't think that's the case for a lot of these songs.
I mean, it is, not to say Joni Mitchell at her worst, but at her kind of most unrigorous.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like stuff that she'd let slide, and and as Bob says, it is easy hanging fruit, low hanging fruit, but it's stuff that, I mean, I lived through it, and she was criticizing people at the time, and I think that's quite a hard thing to do, especially when they're the majority.
Yeah.
And who's buying your records, potentially.
Did anyone watch Don't Look Up?
No.
Now that's a successful commentary on culture. Unlike Chalkmark in a Rainstorm. Jim.
I just counted. According to the Geffen box, there are 17 engineers on this album. Not in the whole Geffen box, but on this album.
Just this album?
Well, to be fair, Jim, some of them are assistants.
Yes, sir.
So there's two actual engineers, Mike Shipley and Dan Marnie, and then there's a bunch of tape ops, which were called assistant engineers by the 80s.
Oh. Okay. So it's just somebody who
throws
the lever.
Your point is valid, because it's more that if you check out the number of studios, that's more poignant or more pertinent, because every studio has its own monitoring equipment, and they all sound different. So what you're reacting to by what you're hearing coming out of the monitors differs from room to room. So you end up with very uneven sounding mixes when you mix in different studios.
Thank you. I counted 9 studios just now.
So that's more pertinent.
She has more people on this album in studios than like the first 4 combined.
About right.
First 4 albums. All right. Any further thoughts on the Reoccurring Dream?
Yeah. Well, just that word is not in the dictionary, if I remember right. I mean, yeah.
There was a big discussion
the
about
title
that.
alone is an annoyance to grammarians.
That was a big discussion on the JMD.
Yes, it was, and we had to touch on it.
It's
That's
in my new Oxford American Dictionary online.
We could pull it out and print it again, or again on JMDL this week.
Everything old is new again.
All right. Well, we have one song left, "A Bird That Whistles," which I read somewhere. I tried to find it, but I read that this was recorded during the Wild Things sessions and then dusted off, which would make sense because her voice definitely sounds more 1982 than 1988 to me on this track.
She has a high range. Who can explain to the group who Wayne Shorter is and why he's a giant? Even though he's not tall, he's a giant.
Yeah, well, you can listen to this solo on this song and you will find that out. And that was what I was going to bring up, is that's the best part of this song.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is true musicianship on an album that doesn't have a lot of musicianship.
Yeah.
Wayne Shorter's work on this song is stellar.
In the liner notes for the Geffen box set, she just says that she told Wayne Shorter, "You are the bird." And she said she could always do that with him. He could understand a metaphor and come up with the sound that she wanted.
He finished the story now. He had so much fun.
Music.
Finish the story now. He had so much fun that in a later take, what happened? Wayne laughed and she kept it.
Oh. Dave.
Jim, responding to your question, were you referring to what's great about Wayne Shorter, or why are we talking about Wayne Shorter in his career, or about on this music?
I guess C, all of the above. You know, the thing is that we've kind of been knocking the musicianship here, you know, and fairly, I think. So, I mean, let's end on a high note and talk about the great Wayne Shorter is
Wayne
coaching
Shorter
people.
Wayne Shorter was kind of the I don't want to say replacement, but he was the when John Coltrane's tenor sax work and soprano sax work in the late 50s and early 60s is legendary. I mean, Miles Davis with Miles Group and then his own recordings. And in 1963, along came Wayne Shorter, a very young player who appeared to be sort of taking the mantle from Coltrane and carrying that torch further. I mean, Coltrane still recorded through the I think 67, but his music got more and more outside and less accessible. Wayne was writing very interesting tunes that are all in the real book, and recording with Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter and Tony Williams, and people that Miles had in his one of his great quintets in 67. So Wayne Shorter was kind of the substitute, if you like, for where Coltrane had been a few years earlier. And so in 1970, he teamed up with Joe Zawinul to form Weather Report, which was the beginning of kind of electric jazz. You had Mahavishnu Orchestra doing that thing, and you had Weather Report doing this kind of jam-based music that was very kind of high-level improvisation. And so Wayne was really the most important voice on the instrument at that time. And so it happened that he was also a painter, and so Joni got to relate to him in that way. So when she brought him in on the Mingus record, or whether actually it was probably Jaco that brought him in, because Jaco was in Weather Report and brought all of his buddies in from that band to play with her. She had a kinship with not only his ability to play, but his ability to take her painterly concepts and immediately know what to do with that, because he would know what to do with, if she said put some purple up in the top right hand corner, he'd know what to play. And that's really a fantastic thing for her, because she no longer had to have a boyfriend like Garin or Henry Louis kind of convert her concept into something that a player would know what to do. She actually had somebody she could speak to directly.
And she was best buds with Wayne's wife, who
Yeah.
passed away in an airplane crash. You remember that story?
Flight 800, TWA Flight 800. Yes.
Over Lockerbie, Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Anna and Taming the Tiger?
Correct.
I never knew that one. Oh. All right. Well, have we finished out the 80s with Joni Mitchell?
Wait, I have one question though about Wayne. Did anybody hear anything about his opera?
Oh, that he's doing.
I know he's done one, but I haven't heard it.
I think it was presented at Kennedy Center, I think like 5 days after the honors.
Yeah.
It's going to be in Los Angeles, I think in March, or that is the plan. The current plan is for it to be in Los Angeles, but with COVID, who knows what's going to happen.
Sorry, hurry up, because the last time I saw him, he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Bob, I forgot to ask you if anyone covered the Reoccurring Dream.
No, of course not. It's a stink bomb. I mean, how could you cover that? You couldn't cover that.
Don't
tempt
me with a good time, Bob.
You've got to build a time machine, go back in time, record those commercials, and work them into the song. So no, there's no covers of Reoccurring Dream. There never ever will be. But Bird That Whistles, yes, it's very significant because Irma Keller, who's a Dutch singer, formed a band and named the band A Bird That Whistles. They did a concert that was recorded, a Joni tribute concert. Their band, A Bird That Whistles, they released a CD of all Joni songs, one of which was, of course, A Bird That Whistles. And then she would go on, she changed the name to Irma Keller Schultz, and she would do another Joni tribute CD, all in Dutch.
Oh, wow.
Every song was in Dutch. So, yeah, that's significant about that song. Even though it's not totally original Joni, it's kind of a sideways twisted rework around of a folk song, Karina.
Right. Now, as I said multiple times, this is my first Joni Mitchell album, and going through this very dense album, I was not being familiar with Joni's other work. It was a breath of fresh air how open, it was just a guitar and voice, and I loved it. All right, David.
I just wonder, Bob, how much of this is Joni and how much of this is not Karina? What is it about this song that's any different than the traditional tune?
I think it's like a meld of two songs. I've got A Bird That Whistles is an old blues song, and then Corina, the Why Is Your Head So Hard kind of thing. I don't think it's like a cover of a song. It sort of is, but sort of is not. Nobody was interested in this song except for Irma Keller, who did this recording with her band in this one concert in the Netherlands and formed a band named A Bird That Whistles was the name of the band.
So is this like Silky Veils of Ardor, where she's taking different verses from different songs?
Yeah, it really is. Jeremy, that's a really good comparison. It's a hybrid.
Bob, I think you're thinking of Caledonia.
Yeah.
What makes your big, thick head so hard?
Right.
All right. Well, friends, we did it. We survived the 80s. We got through Wild Things Run Fast. We got through Dog Eat Dog. And barely, we got through Chalkmark and a Rainstorm. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. The rating. I'm going to go through the order of my tiles. David, you're first. Chalkmark and a Rainstorm. Scale of 1 to 10.
8.
All right. Bob.
So I gave Dog Eat Dog a 4 out of 10. Chalk Mark is not as good as Dog Eat Dog. So I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 10.
Ooh.
But I will say, in Ebenezer Scrooge, the Spirits have done it all in one night. So kudos to us for finishing this record in one night. I did not want to spread it out over a couple of months.
I know when we're
Jamie, big points to Jamie for hanging on for the whole thing.
I know.
It's time, breakfast time for Jamie now. Have a cup of coffee.
That's why when we kept on number one, I'm like, let's move along. We can't give 2 episodes to Chalk Mark and a Rainstorm, as much as I love it. All right, Jamie.
It's a 6. It's a 6. I mean, I do like it, but it's not. It doesn't hold. It doesn't hold much water. I do listen to it because it's probably one of the second album that I've listened to the longest of hers. So it holds a lot of memories for me, and it brings me back to 1988. But for an album, you know, in the pantheon of her albums, it's a kind of a 5.5, 6. Really.
All right, Dave Blackburn.
I have to give it a 3. I mean, it's got a few moments. It's got a turn of phrase. It's got a nice drum groove here and there. So it's not without merit. But I don't think I'll listen to it again.
You're done.
Yeah.
All right,
Off with his head.
Jim.
This album is an Ohio 7 and a New York 6.
Reuben.
8. I like
All right. Yes. Sue. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm mute.
She must have said 10. That's what I thought I heard her say.
Well, I've said 10 for almost all the albums.
Me too.
But I have to give this one a 7.
Oh.
I do like a lot of the songs, but you know, I understand.
All right, I'm filing for divorce.
Oh, come on.
I'm kidding.
That young financier is trying to get. Okay, Mark. Chalk Mark in a Rainstorm. Chalk Mark in a Rainstorm from Mark.
I'll give it a 7 as well. I like it, but it's not up there at the top of her game, I don't think. But it does have some good stuff on it. So I'll give it a 7.
I love how Jahida and Les are like, we're just sitting this one out.
Sit it out. Well, and the good news is we get a whole lot better with the next record.
Yes, exactly.
I do love this next album. That's gonna be a discussion. All right,
That's going to be like a 3-nighter.
Okay, Chris, Chalk Mark in a Rainstorm.
Well, that said going in that even on her worst day, she's still better than so many artists. But I'm gonna go. My gut says this is a 6, so I'm a New York 6 also with this, because I just think that there were some mistakes made along the way with production. There are some really, really nice fragments of lyrics, but again, they mostly turn out to be fragments of thoughts that don't necessarily find themselves a place to live and stay in our memory. And part of that is production, but part of that is also the context in which they present. So 6 for me.
All right, and I guess my rating, I give it a 10. I don't care what you guys say. I love it. I love the production.
Ooh.
I love the drum machines, the 8,000 vocals, the Fogey Financier, Billy Idol, Tom Petty, and Iron Eyes Cody. I'll take them all.
Here, Jeremy, have a can of Tab.
I will say one thing: the amount of time between this record and the next record for me seemed to last an eon. It was a decade, it felt like, because in that time frame, I met her and I couldn't wait to hear what she was going to do next.
And there were so many years where it was always 3 years between the albums, because we had 82, 85, 88, 91, 94, and then of course the trend broke with Taming the Tiger coming in 98. So, all right, well.
So yeah, this is like those posts where somebody from born in the 70s will post a picture of their prom pictures of the hairstyles they had in the mid 80s or late 80s. And they're like, what were we thinking with this crazy ass hair? This album is the What Was I Thinking album for Joni.
No, this album is the fashions come back around and it's back in style again. Give me that gated drum beat.
Never.
Sue, were you say something?
So
Bob, I have a bone to pick with you.
Oh,
you
yeah?
want to divorce me because I said 7 and you were clapping when Chris said 6. What the hell?
I have 10 bones to pick with all of you guys. My Secret Place, number 1, Lakota.
Well, see,
He was starting the applause because he wanted me to wrap up. That was what it was.
You're at a higher standard.
Yeah, you're fighting.
All right, if Joni Mitchell, if you're watching these, remember who stood by you. Remember your friend Jeremy.
That's right.
I'm just kidding.
Thanks for hosting, Jeremy.
Oh, this was
Yep.
so much fun, y'all. I just love these, and I feel like next month is gonna be a really good one because I don't know
Yeah, it'll
about
be great.
everybody here, but I love Chalk Market and Rainstorm, but capital L love Night Ride Home.
There's lots of love about it.
Yeah, and that was the first one. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for the group. There was a article a while back. It was a series of Larry Klein actually interviewed Joni during a series of dinners about these 80s albums. And I don't remember, did she say much about Chalk Market and Rainstorm?
Very little. I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
Very little.
Which
And
interview?
On Indigo, there was nothing. I don't think there were no comments on that one.
And on the Geffen box set, there was no bonus tracks for this one, right? All the other albums had bonus tracks,
No.
except for this one.
No, it doesn't have any bonus tracks.
So for those waiting for the 1988 archives, you may be sorely disappointed.
Mark, I think she did talk about hanging out in England with Peter Gabriel and, playing at his studio for a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did. She mentioned the studios and playing pool or something. I can't remember. But
Which
not about
interviews?
the album itself.
Which interview was this? I don't remember this one.
Well, apparently someone had talked to Larry Klein and proposed that he interview Joni about the records that they made together.
It was Mark. It was Bass Player Magazine asked Larry if he could put together they could put together with his help a series on Joni Mitchell's bass players, like Stills, Max Bennett, Jocko, and so on. And so they went. So Larry met her for lunch on several occasions or whatever, and talked on the phone, and recorded them talking about all of from the very first time she used a bass player up through, working with him, and they kind of went track by track through a lot of the stuff. It was a really good interview.
Yeah, I loved it. I did feel they talked about Wild Things a lot more than this one for sure. Probably for good reason. All right. So we will meet again on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. And Joni is about to give us a Valentine herself with the wildly romantic track, Night Ride Home, next month. So everyone subscribe, join my Patreon if you want to show some love to Mr. Jeremy. And thank you all for discussing the music of Joni Mitchell. No better way to spend time in life, except maybe listening to it. All right. We'll see you next month, my friends.
Bye.
Right.